Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. It's sort of like a mix between The Truman Show and Mr. Festerman Goes to Washington. So, anyway, I think that I'm live and I'm going to proceed as so. If anybody is listening and gets into the comments, then you can let me know if I've forgotten to add myself to the stream or forgotten to unmute my mic or forgotten to click the go live button. So, I'm just looking at those three things. As I'm saying those three things, it's more or less a checklist that I'm running through. I'm going to proceed anyway on the basis that people could hear me if they were there. And I don't need to involve you of the particularities of the technicalities behind this. But that does lead me on to, I suppose, well, as I've said before, showing you that this is authentically bad, right? It's lack of polishedness, professionalism shows you that, or hopefully is some indication that it's genuine. And that allows me from there, one thing leads to another, and allows me to segue from there into talking about why. Why am I doing this? My motivations. Um, it seems to me axiomatic, in other words, self evident, something that is true, needs no other proof other than that it's observable and a baseline truth, that there's no further foundation to it. So when you know somebody's motivations, then that informs you of their morality. It may be that they make mistakes sometimes. It may be that there's a law of unintended consequences. But even in those cases where something doesn't turn out, if you knew what they were trying to do, you knew at least, say, let's say the phrase is their heart was in the right place. I believe my heart is in the right place. But I know that perhaps you might have something in common with me in that you might have, for a large proportion of your life, given too many people the benefit of the doubt, including our politicians. It possibly might be that there might be one or two politicians who genuinely do have the best of intentions, that they are motivated by wanting to do good for other people, or that they have a genuine love for the nation as a concept, as an abstract notion, and as a physical reality. Want to make people's lives even just financially easier, to alleviate pain and suffering, to cause the least amount of pain and suffering, to look after the vital services so that people can look after then their own happiness and spiritual well-being, as long as, let's say, the bottom rung of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is taken care of. So those kind of things. But for too long, each generation gives their contemporary politicians the benefit of the doubt. When everything keeps going from bad to worse, when every calamity turns into an opportunity for them to turn the thumb screws, I nearly got tongue-tied there, and bring in more draconian laws, more tyranny, more temporary suspension of our normal ways of life so that we're constantly living in an abnormal, aberrant, can I think of another ab word? Abstruse, for the sake of it anyway, way of life that runs now contrary to everything we would think should be normal in every facet of life. So every generation keeps thinking, well, they were just trying to do their best. They were just trying to do whatever it was. And we keep giving them so much, well, I'll say the phrase again anyway, benefit of the doubt, where really there should be no doubt remaining. And I put out a poll on my channel. You can do community posts as long as you meet certain criteria. What they are, I don't know anymore. Maybe you have to upload a certain amount of videos, or maybe you don't have to do any if you have had your account for a certain amount of time. Maybe that's all it is. Anyway, I put a poll out, which you can do when you were given the community tab for whatever reason, and I asked, is what's happening now and continues to happen, and when you think of a politician or a president or a prime minister or a bureaucrat of any kind, who keeps saying, I'm going to do this thing and then does the other, or says they're going to do something and does it in such a haphazard and manifestly ill-conceived and badly implemented way that it has the opposite effect. We keep giving them the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, okay, nobody could have foreseen this. And they say that themselves, nobody could have seen this coming. And there comes a time when we kind of go, oh, okay, no, we could have seen it coming, so we could have done a better job. It just turns out the politician is a hapless idiot, that's all. And one of the lessons for me in life, it's been a harsh lesson, to remove not just, the scales from our eyes in regards to the evil in this world, but that one of the things that's surprising to me, and maybe to you, is that a lot of people don't feel the need to be liked or admired or revered or complimented or thought of as intelligent by any of us. They don't care about that at all. And like for me or for you, that may take to arrive at a state of mind where you don't care whether somebody thinks you're clever or intelligent or skillful. To really not be bothered at all if somebody thinks that you're stupid and unskilled and unknowledgeable, unlearned, unknowledgeable. You see, I think part of me still wants people to think, oh, I'm clever, I'm intelligent. Whereas if I don't eradicate any of that, all of that, any and all of that, if I care what people think about me, if I want people to like me, that is a vulnerability. And politicians are a different breed, the most of them. They don't have that vulnerability. They're impervious to some voice that might be there, but that isn't, that's saying, yeah, if I do this and it causes a big calamity, if I do a foobar on this, that was a sort of a military acronym that made something sound polite, but that if you would say the whole acronym, it's the kind of thing that would make your Aunt Violet shrink and ruffle her doily feathers, or whatever the phrase is. When something is foobarred beyond all recognition, to sort of half say it there, they don't get embarrassed and kind of go, oh, I'm going to be so publicly shamed or feel shame if people think that I'm an idiot. I wouldn't want people to think I'm an idiot, but they don't care about it. And that's been a shock to me. So whatever it is they're getting, the wine, women and song, the riches, the stock portfolio, the tidy pension, the houses in the Hamptons, the houses in Hawaii, the houses in San Francisco, in nice areas of San Francisco or Los Angeles and wherever else, and in other parts of the world, those compensate well. I would still want people to think I was a great guy, which is a failing on my part. So anyway, I didn't mean to go on too long in that, but the poll there, and if you can find it in my community tab, it might be interesting to look at it and maybe to add your vote. It's a poll, really. It's not going to change anything. But it might help to wipe the scales from all of our eyes. Because I put in there, like, is it due to incompetence? Is it due to insanity? Are they just mad? Are they indifferent? There's kind of an aspect of indifference to it. But what we're most of us now, I think, coming to terms with and having to keep on top of is the fact that it's malice. It's outright malice. They do it because there is a malevolence, there is a strong dislike, there's a hatred, a detestation, a disgust. There's something about us that they really don't like so intensely that they get enjoyment out of causing harm to us. Even if they never get to see our faces, maybe the thought that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of us out here who are suffering, we're in consternation, we can't figure out what's going wrong and why, and how somebody could so comprehensively mess everything up so completely in every way possible, every aspect of our lives, every aspect of our society. How could their stupidity systematically dismantle it so well we kind of think, I mean, Jesus, you'd nearly think that they were doing it on purpose. They are, right? Eventually, you have to come to that conclusion. And of course, I'm not the first to say this, and I'll give the fella a shout out again there. I was watching a few of his videos during the week, Bianca Zombie, his smaller channel. I say smaller, but it's still probably got more, I'm pretty sure it has more subscribers than mine has. Bianca Zombie. His larger channel is called Bianca Fights the Zombies, but I think the one where he puts maybe ones that he kind of feels like, well, let's say if his smaller channel has 400 subscribers, it's a bit like placing a bet. He says, this one might be sailing a bit too close to the wind, I think he thinks. He says, yeah, but I'll put it on YouTube, but I'll put it on Bianca Zombie. So there was a couple there now of videos recently, a couple of his most recent ones, and one of them in particular where I think he more or less did talk about, say, a San Francisco speakery politician and her husband and that kind of thing. And I think he did examine then from the specific to the general whether there might well be a malevolence, a malice, a malicious streak that they get a kick out of making our lives more miserable and causing us pain indirectly and directly and vicariously and whatever else, I'll say hello there to the Star Trek fan, the Spassaje or Spasavu. I'm not good at pronouncing my letters there. It's a difficult one to pronounce. Maybe you're supposed to pronounce the symbol beforehand and the symbol afterwards. It's sort of like a warm. He thinks space is warm. But I like that guy. I think he's great, and I hope he's doing all right. And I also like the missing. I think he is a very thoughtful individual. And there was a few morning videos. I'm not sure if he was sleeping in the garage or if he would just go to the garage and open it up and look at the morning sunshine, and then that would give him some inspiration, I suppose. Like we probably all did when we were living in wherever we were living, like in the simpler times, our ancestors, I mean, and you'd get up and worship the sun and go, thank God you're back again. Maybe you are God. Anyway, don't mean to be going down a tangent. I really liked the musings, the thoughts that he just put down, and they seemed to me to be, more or less open the mic, say what I want to say, and that's it. And I thought they were great. I'm not putting them under any pressure, but I just want them to know that I appreciated listening to them while they were available, because I don't think they're on. It was either a previous channel or maybe he took them down or whatever. So Susan gave us new stickers, did she? Indeed, Mr. I'll just call you Mr. Space, Mr. Ferengi from Space. That's it, right? Merry Yule. And Yule, I think, I forget, and I remember looking it up before, but I think it's a Norse word. And I remember there was a TV series called Blackadder, and I think they only did one Christmas special, and he had a sort of a non-Christmas greeting, and he said, "May the Yuletide, I'll start again." He said, "May the Yuletide log slip from your fire and burn your house down." Just those kind of acerbic greetings just really tickled my particular funny bone. And I wonder how Susan is spending Hanukkah. Hanukkah. But what did I want to say? Look, I'll just say a little bit more because I never get around to it, and I keep never getting around to the thing I was going to say. There used to be a Scottish comedian from Edinburgh. I used to not know he was Scottish at all because his accent was so soft from Edinburgh, and he was called Ronnie Corbett, and he was a small guy. He'd sit in a large armchair. That was kind of like his gimmick. And there was another fella called Ronnie. I can't think of his name, but he was in Porridge and a few other things. He was a great guy as well, great comedian. They worked well together. They're kind of like opposites. They're very clever linguists as well, very cunning linguists. But you probably heard of the jokes, like they were like shaggy dog stories, The journey was what got you there, rather than the punchline. Norm Macdonald was a past master at it, of course, as well, but so was Ronnie Corbett. And why do I mention him? Well, I suppose just saying that it was just kind of funny and whimsical along the way. I shouldn't compare myself to him. I'm not trying to do that. But maybe a bit like him, he did it on purpose, that you'd never really got to the end. Or when you did, the punchline, you kind of went, oh, well, that wraps it all up. But it was just the way he told them. There was another Irish comedian. another one. No, he was Scottish, but there was a Northern Irish comedian called um, Frank Carson. I think he used to say, "It's the way I tell him," and a lot of the time it is. Different people can more or less give you the same information, but somehow, and it shouldn't be this way, but the way the information is transmitted to you, the cadence, the tone of voice, the character behind it. So Space Jew says great drops there. Well, maybe he's talking about Bianca Zombie and the missing and himself. If he, did I say his name fully there? I didn't mean to. Anne Hesh's liver donation. I like that guy. I just like the cut of his jib. And good to see you streaming, lad. Well, I don't know whether that means that he's from the old country, or whether he's from Cornwall. Pirates, I think, always had a kind of Bristol accent. I think that's really where it came from. But maybe some of them had Irish mixed with West and Southwest English accent. And there must have been some influence from around the world there as well. Good to see you streaming, Jimmy, my lad. Charlton Heston, I think, just what I think of it, did a great accent, I thought, even though a lot of people laughed at it, in an adaptation of Robinson. No, it wasn't Robinson Crusoe. It was, good God, what's Long John Silver? That's it. Now, what is it called, Long John Silver? But anyway, it's that one where he plays a pirate, and he's talking to Jimmy, my lad, and I think he's good at it. But look, I wanted to talk a bit more about my motivations, and I call this one Advent. I suppose, speaking of Advent, right, that did got me thinking. On the third day of Advent, I was going to do a song. It was going to be like, on the third day of Advent, my true love gave to me something like, what was it going to say? 3 stem cells, 2 double helix, and just a clump of cells, something like that, But I haven't got it worked out fully. And then I thought, I'll leave that till another time. I was thinking about Advent and adventure. I did Latin a long time ago, but as far as I remember, ad is a preposition meaning to, towards, against, something like that. And vent is to do with wind. So I thought it might have been, a bit like if you go on an adventure, the wind is in your sails, blowing your hair back as well. And a bit like Bob Seger, against the wind. I embarrassed myself trying to sing that in a, what was it? In a karaoke night in Frankfurt, in a bar in Frankfurt. I was real drunk, shots and whiskey and top of beer, and somebody recorded it, and I thought I was rocking when somebody recorded it, and I definitely wasn't. Oh boy! But anyway, why am I talking about all that? My motivation in doing this, it's to get things off my chest. It's to say my piece now. Or object now, or forever hold my peace, because as I think this, people always seem to have catchphrases they say at the beginning of their streams and at the end or whatever. I don't intend to do this forever. I don't intend to make a career out of this. I have no plans for the future. My plan is to paint my dragons and then to fly off. And it's not as if, I mean, everybody is, I suppose, these days, it's getting more popular to have a YouTube channel or have a podcast. It reminds me of that Bible thing where they said there's going to be so many false prophets, didn't they? And maybe if you were up in space, if there was such a thing, and if you could hear everybody down here, they're all just chattering, all the crowds with their mindless chatter. And there's that Shakespeare phrase as well. I think that's the play I was thinking of last. Well, there's 2 plays. It's either As You Like It or Midsummer's Night's Dream, and I can't think of what it is, but it's the one where everyone, I think, knows that quote now because it was said a lot over the last couple of years, and it was about something to do with life is naught but sound and fury. Every player has his hour upon the stage, struts his stuff, does whatever, and then he gets off the stage. So look, I guess the way I'm feeling about it is that I'm here, you're here, we're all here. I kind of hate to. I don't like following crowds. I don't like to do whatever's popular. So it kind of makes me embarrassed that I might be doing what everybody else is doing, even though I'm doing it in my own little special way, right? But I kind of feel like I'd better, if I'm here, if there's never an opportunity to do it again, just say whatever, get it off my chest, and so I won't have any regrets for not having said it. You know, that kind of a way. Anyway, hello to Matt. Kiss my tyrants. I was trying to pronounce your name in a way that won't sort of trip the profanity filter. I'll read out your comment here. The puppeticians, I like that. The puppeticians are just dancing for dollars. The master of puppets is working for vengeance against good because of his jealousy and disdain of us and his narcissism. I like that word disdain. I must use that in there seems to be a rule of threes, and I think people I never did any sort of studying and how to write literature or how to. I bet one of the things listening to Bianca Zombie is he sounds like somebody who has done an an arts degree, but not just an arts degree. Somebody who studied a kind of like a science of how to write a script or something like that. He seems to know a hell of a lot about Hollywood, right? And all I know is I've heard of a thing called the rule of threes. So if I was to say they detest us, they're disgusted by us, and they have disdain for us. There seems to be something of, if you can get something that's alliterative, in other words, it has the same letters, and there's three it's like a left hook, a right hook, a left hook. There's something that has a much, I'll say impact, a much deeper impact, But I like that disdain. I think that it's a gentle word. I don't think it would get you kicked off anything for saying it, and so I like it. But I wanted to explain before I go any further, because I, like Ronnie Corbett, I keep never getting to the point, even though maybe it is nice and whimsical. But I did want to say this because the last few times I kind of had these ideas of what I title it, and I'll tell this story around it, and then see what else I can do off around that. Anyway, painting your dragons, right? I do appreciate the Christian morality, but I don't think anybody should need it, right? Because all of it seems so self-evident to me, especially, that Jesus wrapped it up as, listen, lads, right? If you still haven't got it, right, I have to climb up my cross here. I'm late for an appointment up here on, well, I forget the hill now, the name of the hill, but I'm sure you all know it. Nobody should need to be told, do unto others as you'd have done unto you, right? Every toddler, right, who's misbehaving in kindergarten can be told, now there, Johnny, how would you like it if somebody else did that to you? And of course, like, me, if I was being belligerent, I'd go, I'd like it. What are you talking about? But the point stands nonetheless. If you're sentient in any way, which maybe people aren't anymore, people kind of say like, oh, I don't like hitting somebody else, or sorry, well, that other person doesn't seem to like being hit in the face. Oh, I didn't like being hit in the face myself. Oh, right, maybe I ought not to do that, right? It's simple, and that's the core essence of Christianity. So all these people, right? It's a bit like, and I mentioned it during the week when I was having I think just a text conversation on somebody else's video. There's an episode of Seinfeld where George Costanza buys a sweater, or maybe somebody else buys it and gives it to him, and it just has this tiny, almost imperceptible stain, but it's there nonetheless if you look for it. So that's why it's heavily discounted. But other than that, maybe it's a cashmere sweater. It looks very expensive, so he tries to give it as a present to some girl I think he's trying to go out with, and then she's not having it because she sees he's a cheapskate and she doesn't like him anyway. And then he gets a new job, and he gives this sweater to the Hispanic cleaning lady, and she thinks, oh, this is amazing. Right. Anyway, long story short, he ends up, and I'll use the word fornicating. He fornicates with her on the desk after everybody else goes home, but somehow gets caught. Or maybe he gets caught because he messes up this entanglement he has with her. She wants to have some kind of relationship with him. And of course, George is only into just evening delights or whatever. And when he eventually gets called into the boss to explain himself, and the boss is saying, "Look, HR or onto me or whatever, and I have to, maybe I've got to let you go, or I've got to discipline you or whatever." And George then kind of feigns ignorance, and he says, like, "Oh, was that wrong? Oh, was I not supposed to do that? Well, is it? Oh, is there some policy about not doing that on top of the desk in the? See, I didn't see that in the corporate policy, and you know, maybe like with politicians, we give benefit of the doubt. Maybe the employer is kind of like, oh, is this guy really that dense? He's lived this long, and he doesn't understand innately, what is a sort of an acceptable way for people to comport themselves in society. Um, could it be that this guy has got it, managed to get to this age and he doesn't know what is something that could be tolerated? Maybe he hasn't had a job in a corporation like this before. Maybe he doesn't know. Maybe he genuinely has an entirely different life out there that I'm used to. Maybe his idea of normal is entirely different. Lord knows these days it could be. But anyway, the reality of the matter is, right, if we just all get sensible here for a moment, is that nobody needs to be told what's normal and decent, right? But of course, there's a huge amount of people, myself included, at one point would have been, to have the attitude of, well, let's test the boundaries here. It's the shrinkage, exactly. Yes, and this is Anne Heche's liver donation. That was another episode. Like, it was funny, but of course you wouldn't want to hang around with these people. It's only funny when you're looking at it on TV. Just like so many of the sci-fi movies, we were fascinated with them. But now that it's coming true in real life, I don't want it in real life. I don't want cyborgs, and I don't want Terminators going around that can't be reasoned with, and I don't want to have to deal with you know human alien hybrids or machines that are so intelligent that they actually seem more competent and more human than some of our apparently brethren who have souls and were of woman born. Um, so yeah, so as you don't defend anybody, there is no bottom sort of floor at which we would say to people, look, either you're feigning stupidity or your stupidity is genuine, in which case you're excommunicated from society and we can't have you in our society. Or if you are there, we can't have you in any position of power. So, like, that's the same attitude we have to have with our politicians as well. Look, either you're too stupid to have the position you have, and we have to have recriminations for every single person who got you there, or you're feigning stupidity as some kind of cover for your deliberate acts of malice. And I think the legal term for that is malfeasance. You know, either a conscious causing of harm or a reckless disregard for the well-being of the people in your charge. Um, so, but of course, people just put it down to, oh, it's hypocrisy. Politicians, what you going to do? And a large part of that is because so many people know that their own houses are built on sand themselves. They're afraid that, well, if I start pointing the finger at other people, people might say, well, what about you? Are you squeaky clean? And of course, like, nobody can say that. Nobody can say that they are. And it used to be, I think there still is a law, but it certainly used to be. I remember my parents telling me like that there's a law that if you're being blackmailed, that you can go to the authorities and say, I'm being blackmailed. And they'll go, okay, good, right. The main thing is that you have revealed a conspiracy to us, and now we can investigate, a large crime here. And maybe they might sort of say, "We'll go easy on you because you did the right thing. You owned up at the earliest opportunity," that kind of thing. But nobody wants to take the chance that they can rely on other people's innate sense of what is good, what is decent, and what is pragmatic for a society. Everyone has to be all like, "Oh, I didn't know that wasn't in the rules. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, okay." And then, of course, HR gets another inch into everybody's life. Right, we're going to have to regulate relationships now, both in and outside of the office, and that includes anybody who might be in a third-party company that has a contract with us tangentially and all that kind of thing. By the way, that happened in a corporation that I was in, and you knew, by the way, when this email went out saying you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. Yeah, if you're married, you have to, say what her name is, and if you're thinking about having a relationship, and you have to come clean with it and go to HR, and all this is absolutely outrageous. But you knew it was because some director or some senior management had just got caught with his or her pants somewhere where they shouldn't have been. You know, my God, Lily Gazoo says great. list of links you posted in the description. I've just watched most of it so far. I don't know how you do it, Lily. That's some multitasking. But anyway, that brings me to the idea of religion. I was against religion, anti-religion, for so long because I kind of thought, look, this is ridiculous. Religion is just obviously used as a control mechanism to keep people in society in line. And I wanted people to be free of that. But then when I kind of got my wish, and I would put it at around sometime in the mid to late 90s, because everybody got rich, right? And they didn't need God anymore, and the Catholic Church had been through a lot of scandals, right, to put it very tamely. I knew long before that the Catholic Church had no moral authority. They wouldn't even explain to me why I had to do whatever they said I had to do without questioning what it was. Just believe whatever they said, you know. But from a pragmatic point of view, it kept all the idiots in check. You see, it turns out all these people who were pious, you know, went to church with their rosary beads, knew all the homilies and the rituals, and knew when to stand up and kneel down and shake hands and all this kind of thing. Turn around, you know, hold one leg with one hand and hop on the other leg, all this sort of stuff. Seventh Day Adventists, and there's a joke in there somewhere about I think it was in Red Dwarf where Rimmer said, "Oh well, there was a misprint in my Bible, so we thought it was Seventh Day Hoppists." And with this kind of thing, where you knew that there was just kind of willing misinterpretation of all this stuff, and I knew it was just used for people to browbeat other people. But you see, when at least when that was happening, you didn't have all these idiots kind of going, "Well, I believe in all this other stuff, this multicolored, rainbow-colored gamut of anything goes from one end of the spectrum to the other." You know, at least we only had a sort of, I guess what you could say is we had all our idiots corralled into the one pen, but now they're everywhere and they've weaponed their individual quirks and stupidities and incomprehensibilities into a maelstrom. I keep using that word, even though it means whirlpool, I think, even though it doesn't mean a storm or a tornado. But it's chaos, which is just according to their plan. But look, that's a long-winded way of saying I've kind of come around again and kind of said to myself, well, look it. I do appreciate so much of the Bible, and I do appreciate so much of the way that things are expressed in it now, in retrospect. So I'm going to say that a large aspect of my attitude was wrong. But also, I recognize that there's a lot of people who are into the whole Norse thing. And yeah, I realized a while ago that Monday was Moon Day, and I think Tuesday is Tyri or something like that, which might be Middle Eastern. But anyway, Odin and Thor and Freya are obviously Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And not only that, but that's the way it is in every language. If you look at it, there's a wiki article for pretty much every language. And all around the world, right? This goes back for so long. All around the world, that's the way they are as well. So what gives there? Again, just like the pyramids all around the world, there must have been some understanding of a convention all around the world. So it's most odd. But look, what I want to say is that there's different ways of understanding the same truth. In an ideal world, and of course I didn't realize it, and I guess I did, I was an idealist. I figured people shouldn't need any of these religions to know how to treat each other right. We wouldn't need God if we just treated each other right. And there's Miss Maskless on cue. She's saying, "Hey, EE." And she popped in, or maybe she's been listening, but she commented, just as I'm dissing God. But yeah, I was somebody who felt like I had the light of understanding in me. Now, maybe that's a Christian way of looking at it too. God dwells within your own heart. You know, God is within you. Look inside you. So it gets all very confusing, doesn't it? But it turns out I need God now because, you know, I'm not the same as Jesus. I wouldn't be saying, God, you know, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I'd be saying, God, listen, if you can smite any of these, I won't say the B word, if you can smite any of these guys, I'd really appreciate it. They totally deserve it, you know. So I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, but I'm trying to be humorous about it, and I certainly don't want to be a holy Joe, and I don't want to make out that I'm free from sin. But I thought, listen, we don't need to be told what to do. That's been my objection. And if you want to tell me what to do, explain to me why. And that was my big objection. Never came with any explanation. Just believe me, because I say so. And of course, when you're a child, it's because I'm the adult. And then, when you're in school, it's because I'm the teacher. I'm the authority figure. And I remember thinking, like, I can't wait to get out of junior school, primary school. And then I'll be in big boys school. And then I'll be able to do what I want, like Cartman. You can tell me to do what I want. Um, and, it never changes, of course. You get to secondary or you get to high school, middle school, high school, and it doesn't change. And you think, well, I'll go to college and then I can do what I want. No one will tell me what time I have to be in class, all this kind of thing. You just go to your lectures if you want and you study when you want. But there's still exams to do and there's still a schedule and a timetable and, this kind of stuff. And there's still what the left might call a power dynamic between the teacher or the lecturer and you, the tutor and you. And then you leave there and you go and get a job, and then your employer is telling you what to do. And even to the point where, as I say, the corporation, and this was one of the last straws for me. And of course, I went absolutely no way. But I turned to my colleagues as if to go, like, would you look at what they're trying to do? And they were trying to, they sent out a letter saying, in case anyone didn't hear me there, they sent out an email and a memo to everyone in the world, right? And again, absolutely massive household name. But there's no point in telling you the name because, look, wasn't there a tire company? Was it Michelin or Bridgestone or Dunlop? I can't remember. And they were telling people, like, why don't you be less European? All this sort of stuff. Why don't you hate yourself a bit more? Why don't you resign and give your job to somebody who just got here from India or Africa or whatever? Yeah. So on top of all that sort of stuff, which became par for the course, it was, we're going to regulate your relationships now. Like, and the way they started doing it, like, was so insidious, so invidious. Just gradually, it's always pretending that we just want to help you, or we just want to do something nice for you. And in this corporation, there was we're going to have Sunday family fun time. We're all going to have a picnic together. Why? Because you all work for us. Like, we all work together. I don't want to spend time with these people on the weekend. And this kind of enforced happiness really rankled with me. But it's the same kind of obstinance, right? The resentment of illegitimate authority, or somebody who presumes authority over you. And that's something that I bet that all of us have in common here, no matter what kind of sort of religion that we might have, like whether it's Norse, or whether it's Christian, or whether it's Catholic or Protestant, which should be diametrically opposed. Martin Luther was the guy I couldn't think of. Like, that's a hot button name, isn't it? He wrote a book about somebody who lies. But I would say, look, there does seem to be a facet, an aspect of Muslims who, at least right these days, seem to be speaking a lot more truth, or at least standing up for what they believe in, a lot more so than most Christians. What makes them phony? Well, maybe you did miss it, Miss Maskless. There are so many. You probably, and I'll tell the story again. It's worth repeating, and not just for your benefit, but I think this might make it clear for you. There's a story in the Bible about a guy in glad rags, right? He's a rich merchant kind of a guy. Got lovely, expensive clothes, and he's in Nazarethian times. I'm saying that word wrong, but anyway, he's somewhere around Galilee or wherever, and he goes into a church or a temple or whatever it is, and he says, he goes right up to the top, and he's beating his chest and he's going, "Oh God!" and whatever altar is there, or the tabernacle, and he's saying, "Oh God, I'm so sorry for my sins," and he's kind of looking around to see if there's anyone there in the congregation, or if anybody out in the road outside can even hear him, and he's hoping the people are saying, "Wow, that guy must have a great relationship with God." He's so vocal about his sins, and like, he's a great guy because, like, every time he sins, he pops in there and he's the first to admit it, and he's shouting from the rooftops how sorry he is, how contrite he is. He's always doing the act of contrition, and he's really sorry because he's saying it so loudly, and he's making sure his prayers go up to God there. And then meanwhile, there's a beggar at the back of the church, and there's always this contrast. And the beggar is kind of stepping in gingerly into church, and he's not really sure if he's allowed in there, and especially that his sandals might be dusty and whatever, and his cloak. And he just says, "Look, God, I'm sorry to bother you, and I know you're busy with that guy up there who's being very ostentatiously pious, and it's all for show. He doesn't care about anything. He probably doesn't believe in God, but he just wants the community to think he's lovely." And the beggar is saying, "Look, God, I'm sorry about this, and I'm not worthy, obviously, to darken your door, but if it's not too inconvenient, maybe you could hear my prayers. And when I'm walking along the road, I don't know if you can hear me or not, and I'm sorry, like, for all the things that I've done, maybe things I've forgotten that I haven't admitted, but I hope that you'll look down on me kindly anytime you got a chance to." So there's that kind of a contrast going on, and those are the phony pious people, and I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, Miss Masculus. And you can get them in any creed or denomination, race, religion, or whatever. And I hate to be so egalitarian about it, because I never wanted to be an egalitarian. I never wanted to be somebody who's like, "Oh yeah, well, you get good and bad people, ebony and ivory." But unfortunately, it seems to me that there's so many rotten ones in my own society, in my own people who should be genetically related to me directly and by extension. So many spineless, cowardly, turncoat, treacherous people. And I do believe that I am able to say that people who go to synagogue or temple, I think there have been and are currently some decent ones of those. And I never wanted to be somebody who's, you know, saying that, oh, there's good and bad in everybody and there's no defining characteristics, and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. I mean, a lot of the times you damn well should, right? If you weren't so naive as I certainly used to be, and there's still a lot of naivety in me. But at the same time, I know that the message has to be, because it wouldn't be true if it wasn't, that unfortunately there are differentiations to be made. There are very distinct discernments to be made. Um, and so I don't want it to end up sounding like a wishy-washy message, you know. But if I want to speak the truth, and I have to say that I do feel like that if there is a God, that it's possible. I don't want this to sound like that. Oh, I'm thinking highly of myself, that He might want to speak through me, because I think that's something Matt said before. But any of us who choose to be a vessel for it, it seems to me that something or someone, whatever it is, even if it's only just whatever's inside us that wants to be as pure as possible, and divest ourselves of the kind of the bad aspects that, yeah, I didn't think there was such a thing as like original sin, and certainly don't in the way that they're trying to foist on us. But I don't know how we're born imperfect or not, but uh, it may well be that our short lifespans are opportunities to refine whatever it is that we're born with inherently. We can either ignore it and just be concerned with the superficial things in life, or we can put our best foot forward, stand up straight, use the gifts that God gave us, whatever it is exactly that God means to you. So, getting back to it, painting your dragons. I figure that I was born with a moral framework, and I think we all were too. And I think the idea of saying, "Oh, I didn't know, and I needed to join a religion so they could give me commandments," I mean, the very idea that anybody needs to go up a mountain and come down one and say, "Lads, I've been talking to God, and He tells me that you're not supposed to kill each other," and everyone's like, "Oh, right, I didn't know that. Well, this is news. Tell us more." You know, and one of them is like, "Honor thy mother and thy father." And what exactly does honor mean? Because I always had big problems with that. I could thought, but what if your parents are wrong, and they often are? And what if your parents are terrible people? And I know some people have had bad parents, or maybe one of them was. And I think that could keep people stuck in a confusion where they don't know how to get out from underneath that and say, okay, I might not have had a perfect childhood, but I can still choose to not be like that. I can use the adverse childhood experiences to understand what it should have been like, and not only to never visit those sins onto anybody else, but to now use my experience to turn that around, turn it inside in the crucible of human suffering, I suppose. Like Alexander Solzhenitsyn says, thank you, or he says, bless you, prison. And he comes out of it like not a bitter and wizened guy, but he's and I don't know, like I am bitter about the whole thing, right? I resent this whole journey, but at the same time, I'm trying to be a better person. I'm trying to be the better person that I don't want to. I'm being dragged kicking and screaming to try and be a better person. I want to wreak my revenge. That's another quote from, I think, Blackadder, right? A guy who's got a speech impediment, wreak my revenge. He says, wreak my revenge. But I don't feel like I want to be magnanimous about it. I don't feel like I want to forgive my enemies. It feels like a weak thing to do, but I do understand somehow, right, that Alexander Solzhenitsyn coming out of the gulags and the terrible torture that they put him under, starvation and physical torture, and that he says, oh, I'm really glad of my experience. I wouldn't be the well-rounded and well-formed and hardened diamond of an individual without having had such a intense, I suppose it's like being reborn, but baptism of fire again, So Matt says, yeah, Freudian issues are real and really screw many people up, and I'm speaking from experience, of course. Yeah. Nobody's had a perfect upbringing, but some people's upbringing was worse than others. But each one of us feel like that we're so hard done by. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying I feel like I've been hard done by, even though my parents were pretty good, I would say, in the scheme of things. But I still feel aggrieved at certain things, even just the fact that one of the things is that my mother kept me so naive, but I think that she actually thought that I was just too stupid to understand and to put it into proper context. Because when I was 6 years old, I asked her, why did, and I'll use Norm's word for him, right? Why did old Shankety Clankety dislike or detest those people? And I'll say this, that I remember in school around the same time, a fella brought into school a toy called a Jacob's Ladder. And, just to give you some context to what I'm talking about, and I thought that it was a fascinating toy. It was an optical illusion, but yet it had a physical property to it that I couldn't understand. And even though I slowed it down, I still couldn't understand it, and I wanted to understand it. So in that context, I asked my mother, because I learned about it, because they now looking back, they must have taught me about it earlier. I said, why did old Shankety Clankety not like them? I mean, they're just like us. They just have a slightly different religion. I didn't really know what the details were, but I knew our religion was just whatever. It wasn't the focal point of my life, and I just wanted to play with my friends and have a good time. And I think I enjoyed school, and but I also like playing outside afterwards and like break time. And I thought none of it really made any difference. So why did adults in the past, in the black and white days, do bad things to people? My mother should have, I think, in hindsight. But look, how was she supposed to know? I got to forgive her for that. But at some point between then and when I was in my 40s, I think she should have let me know. Oh yeah, because I'm pretty sure she knew the answer. But I think her perspective. Now, she wasn't an ardent Christian, but she did say to me two things. One, I think, was basically just, look, don't trust the people who you think your friends are with your life or too much, because they'll let you down. And she was absolutely right about that. Unfortunately, you can't trust anybody, right? So there's no point in saying like, oh, our people are the best, or Christians are the best, or Europeans are the best, or Americans from any particular country originally in Europe are the best. You know what I mean? Because when the chips are down, they'll all turn into Peters and Judases. And she said to me that, look, I might be dismissive of the Bible and Christianity because I feel that I'm so clever, right? And I assume that everybody else keeps to their word and says what they mean and mean what they say, but they don't. They say whatever is convenient and they believe whatever is convenient at any given time because they're opportunists. That's just the way most people are. And that's a message that I want to give to young people. I don't mean to, people use the word black pill, so demoralize. That has a very specific meaning, but I'm using it in the meaning of make people so despondent that they're so upset they feel like they can't continue on. No, I'm trying to forewarn people, because even though it always seems like these are end times that we're living in, unfortunately for me, it seems like nothing's going to come to a stop. Nothing will come to, um, the denouement, which is like the end of the story, where the story arc wraps everything up neatly in a bow. Hercule Poirot, or Angela Lansbury in Murder, She Wrote, finally puts the finger on the guy who done it, or the woman who done it, and it's all wrapped up in a neat little bow. It never gets that way. I think the world's going to keep on spinning, and I think that human beings are just going to get born into this story at whatever point in the uh, slope of descent it is, or parabolic slide. And they're going to think whatever time they were born at was normal, and then whatever technology was created when they were kids and teenagers is good, and then whatever technology is created when they're in middle age, they want to put a hold on it, right? And the funny thing is, it seems that when you get to your dotage, unless you've practiced at being wide awake and try to divest yourself of the creature comforts of this world, then you're going to like technology as long as it makes your passage into later life and on into the grave as comfortable and as pain-free as possible. So that's why you're not going to get any allies in the boomer generation, very few of them, because their attitude is, I've done my bit, I upheld my end of the bargain, I did what I was told to do, I was a good little boy, now give me my pension and let me have a good time, and let me be anesthetized with whatever modern science can give me, so that I have a pain-free, comfortable life, like I was promised. And that's why, like, if you try and red pill most people from the boomer generation, they feel, and I know that they think it was not just an implicit contract. There was, a great New Deal, and they might not have signed on the dotted line, but they did sign up to it. And they think that if any of us try to speak too much truth, or try to say to them, do you not see what's going on? Do you not see how it's all a scam? Do you not see how the stock market is a scam? They know their pensions is wrapped up in the stock market. So they definitely do not want us pulling at that thread and putting it all asunder. But I keep going off on various different tangents. But my mother said to me, look, just be truthful. Just be a decent individual. Just treat people right. Don't steal. Don't cheat. But at the same time, don't trust anybody implicitly, and you'll be all right. And I think she figured that would be enough. So she didn't need to tell me why, oh, shankety clankety didn't like those people. Right? Because she figured if I wasn't a corrupt individual, then I couldn't be corrupted. And there's a lot of truth to that. Now, I'm not saying I haven't been corrupted. I have lived in the world, and I've partaken of some of its delights. I'm not trying to make any great confessions. And I don't think I've done anything particularly bad. But there have been times, I suppose, where, I guess I wanted to just have a good time, you know? And I have lived maybe occasionally on a superficial level. And I suppose those were the times when I was maybe bored. I remember saying to God or the universe or whatever was listening, whether it's the devil, anthropomorphic or not, or just a collection of all the sum total of the selfishness and cowardice and maliciousness of human beings. But I remember saying, look, send me something, send me a woman who's licentious, right? Send me an exciting girl, send me an adventure, send me something, send adventure my way. And then, and things would, or maybe it would be like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'd go out and look for it, and I'd sort of say, this must be it, confessing my sins, So, but there's just that aspect of it. I'm not going to go into any more specifics than that, but another time I might, because I think some of the stories are pretty good, but they can't just be good. They have to be instructive of something. But that's enough for now. But I just want it to be told, I'm not trying to be publicly pious here, but there are some things that I want to say, and speaking to my motivation as well, is because nobody gave me what I feel like should have been an introduction to Earth, to this world, and told, look, I'll boil it down for you, right? You don't have time to figure it all out on your own, and nobody gives you the fine print. It's only after bitter experience that you realize So I wish that my mother had told me, oh, yeah, look, and be extra careful of those ones. Because it is true. The left are always saying correlation is not causation, right? Because they think they're clever because somebody told them that, right? Who claims to own the science. And as I've said before, and I don't mean this to sound egocentric, but I've always been a scientist because I've always followed the scientific method without before I knew what it was. And it seemed to me when I learned the scientific method, I kind of went, well, duh. Just the same way as, if you read, well, maybe not all the commandments, but certainly the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have done unto you. Like, well, duh. Nobody needed to tell me that. I didn't need instruction in religion. And equally, nobody needed to sit down and tell me about how you perform scientific inquiry. Science is just gathering knowledge, making observations, forming theories, um, imagining what it might be like if you changed some of the variables within this sort of theorization you have that this might cause this. And you might say, well, let's see if I'll change this variable. And I do see cause and effect here, And then you might say, well, I'll undo that change if it's possible to undo that change. And do I see the cause of the previous change then undo itself? I mean, that's basically the scientific method. Well, duh, So I never needed anybody to tell me that. And I was a curious child, as I'm sure most of you were too. All of you were too. Curious and obstinate, right? I want to look at this. I want to see what happens if I do this. Oh, you can't do that. You can't touch that. Well, I want to, So I think these are the characteristics that may be common to all of us, which is why all of us are here and all of us reject the paradigm that they were trying to foist on us for the last 2 years. And why we continue to be obstinate. And it doesn't matter whether they come out and go, oh, well, we may be wrong about a few things, and now we're officially going to say we were wrong about this, but that doesn't mean that we're not wrong, or we're not correct about whatever we're saying now. They always reserve the right to be correct about the future, and then say that the past is irrelevant whenever it's irrelevant to them. So any kind of admissions like that are obviously just rope-a-dope stuff and meaningless. But yeah, so Space Stew there says, so many Europeans, and yeah, I mean, I can't name them all, but born scientists. And there is that inquisitiveness, which you don't see in a great many other people. But at the same time, I'm going to say that there are exceptions, and the other thing is, I would say, even if somebody isn't inventive, I these days, current year, I've been thinking a lot about they tell us that there's these things like different aspects of IQ. So if you kind of go, oh, well, this guy over here has got an IQ of 130, and that guy over there has got an IQ of 100, and that guy over there has got an IQ of 85, and they sort of say, well, the person who I thought was most intelligent didn't score the highest, and then of course they're straight out with the excuse of, oh, well, there's different kinds of IQ. There's emotional EQ as well, which I guess, yeah. But they say even with IQ, there's IQ that runs in different aspects, different skills. But oh, well, there's more granular ways, and you wouldn't understand. We have our own systems over here that we don't let you peruse, because you just wouldn't understand it. You wouldn't understand the science of our intelligence testing. So of course you can never win with that because they're never arguing. I've actually seen. I'll say the phrase first. They're never arguing from a sincere point of view, or from arguing in good faith. I've observed recently that the left have been taught that phrase. Oh, we're not arguing in good faith. It's all about projection, isn't it? Projection. But anyway, what I've thought about recently is that I would much rather an 85 IQ individual who is honest, right? Who is trustworthy. I definitely would prefer that. What good is it to me, 125, 130 IQ individual who is deceptive, deceitful, hypocritical? So I don't care if he's going to invent, the wheel or the internal combustion engine. If he's a double-dealing, backstabbing, dastardly, and I can never think of the right word to finish on that isn't a cuss word, duplicitous, but anyway, individual. And the thing is, then people kind of think, oh, that's good. Then I'll look for stupid people. At least they're honest. They're not clever enough to pull the wool over my eyes. No, they are. I have met plenty of stupid people and people who are like real genuine. Oh my God, how the hell can they fend for themselves? I think like whatever it might be, like maybe it's not really something you can measure like on a linear scale, but like let's say they were 65 or less. And they're able to dupe you because they know that in you, you have a kindness that can be taken advantage of. Even now, they can somehow make you feel sorry for them. And even when you call them out on the very obvious, sometimes very obvious deceit they're trying to do to pull on your heartstrings, and you kind of go, oh, listen, come off it. You're trying to tell me that you're starving, but I can see that you have a wad of 20s there poking out of your pocket. And I was in that situation with one of these kind of beggar guys once, and he laughed and he smiled and went, ah, you got me, you know? And he kind of thought, ah, well, we're both friends now, we're sharing a secret. And again, I realized he was clever enough to try and sort of pass that off and inveigle me into a like sort of a shared conspiracy now that we were both in, that he'd kind of run after somebody else on the pavement and try and hit him up for, you know, a few quid, a few dollars or whatever. And then winking back to me as if to kind of go, like, it's a great game, though. It's a great game, isn't it? And I kind of thought, wow, like he is severely mentally dimmer than average. And yet he's glick. Right? That's a word that my people use for meaning kind of, it's a different kind of cleverness. And one thing from my parents' generation, they used to always say they've got a rat cunning, right? So it's an instinct. They're born with it. Like, I don't know, you know, the way the scientists do experiments on rats. And they do that because I guess they think, well, their brains are simpler. They're a lower order mammal. So we can test things on rats, and then by extrapolation, we can have a good idea as to whether it's going to work on humans. By the way, at the moment, Neuralink is doing, and apparently has made successful experiments where they can control a rat by brain waves by implanting a Neuralink chip in it. But anyway, that's by the by. Um, you might sort of say a rat isn't that clever compared to a human being, but it knows how to be successful. And as these people who do the I think they're called the body language panel or something like that, um, they one of the phrases they often say is, "Look, people don't have to be clever, you know, to get away with crimes, or to lie to people, or to manipulate people. They don't need a high IQ. They just need to do whatever works." And they keep saying the animal does whatever is successful, right? So, you know, whether Darwin was an opportunist or a cultist or a propagandist or a pseudoscientist, doesn't really matter. There are certain principles that hold true. Um, it doesn't matter how clever I am if I don't reproduce, my clever genes don't carry on into the rest of civilization. And what's the point then? Like, where did my cleverness get me? You know what I mean? And this is why the thing which Stefan Molyneux, uh, I think he got kicked off. I presume for mentioning all the time was this different reproductive strategy, or versus K. Well, like all us in our clever, civilized, Western, sophisticated societies, you know, preening our own tail feathers about how clever we are. And meanwhile, like, what is the measure of success? You know, how clever it is that we put a turn of phrase one time, or somebody in Uganda. You know, and I'm thinking, Uganda is just brilliant. The accent is so funny, and if you haven't seen that, why are you gay? Thing. It's just, oh, it's a treat. And I think there's a second fella, independent of the first guy, who more or less says the same thing recently. But anyway, just picking Uganda at random, you know, somebody there who has 10, 12, 15 kids. Like, by what measure of success are we going by? Like, would we say, oh, well, they only have a 95 or 85 or 105 or whatever IQ, whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. Um, who cares? Like, everybody dies in the end, and what do they leave behind? A bunch of clever words they said into the ether. And if that's all I do, it's something. In case there's an afterlife, that's what I'm doing. I'm imagining a future afterlife where I'm kicking myself saying, oh, so I never get to have any effect, no matter how small, ever again on that earth. And it's like being on a field, as I said the last time, you know, like John Fogerty, put me in, coach. I'm ready to fly. Oh, yeah, or whatever it is, you know, I'm ready to try. Um, you know, and I'm cringing as I'm singing there, but I'm trying to get over my fears a bit as well, you know. So it is kind of just more or less like, well, I don't know what comes afterwards. It's not exact. It's Pascal's wager. I've got no time for that. Hedging your bets. F off. You know. Have the courage of your convictions. Place your chips down on red or black, or neither, if that's your bet. But make your bet and stick to it. You know. Don't try and hedge your bets, because any god that would be worth spending eternity with wouldn't be one that you could so easily manipulate. You know. And he wouldn't take kindly to that. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm speaking, for whatever it's worth. And because, and here's my catchphrase, which, well, for now anyway, it's like the end of it, or like the beginning of a marriage ceremony, if there's any objections, speak now or forever hold your peace. And it'll be an uneasy peace, won't it? Where you're not allowed to think anything, and you really won't. Like, it's, again, another terrible discovery is that without enough words, without enough vocabulary, like higher order words other than like grug, feel hungry, grug like woman, all this kind of stuff. I don't think you necessarily need vocabulary for that. Grug is cold. Any more than that, I think that you need vocabulary. And this is why different cultures have different languages, because the way that the words are, the way that they sound on the ears, the way that they feel on the tongue, the way that you order the words, the mental image that they might conjure, it all changes the way you look on the world. And which is why it's important to learn other languages, because it gives you an insight into how other people see you and see the world. And it gives you a mirror to look back at your own culture and language to kind of go, oh, I thought I knew the words that were coming out of my mouth, but it turns out I didn't. So I'll wrap this introductory hour, probably is, right, up by saying painting your dragons, right? And the reason why I wanted to get onto it is because I mentioned before, I believe that my moral framework came with me when I was born. I didn't need religion to tell me, and I didn't need some corporate overlords to tell me what's permissible to think and say. Right, so I rejected religion for the same way as I reject the global homogenous corporation overlords who would be our new religion. Because again, I asked my parents, I'll say this, right? Why did the communists in communist Russia, why did they not like, and I got distracted there, but yeah, you're absolutely right, Mr. Ferengi. I wouldn't dismiss all of it though, by the way, and I'll leave that till another time. I've got a lot to say about Africa, right? And unfortunately, some of it's going to be where it's not all just, haha, look at those primitives over there, right? But what I got to do is I know I've got some photographs somewhere, and I've got to just put them all together in a sort of a little slideshow, and it'll remind me of certain things to say. Right? So I'm going to leave that till another time. Cheers, Mr. Ferengi. And cheers, Maze Mind. It's good to see you. And Stephen Crumley. What did I want to say? God, gosh darn it. I've slightly lost my train of thought there, but it was along the lines of I'll just say painting my dragons and rejecting, anybody else telling me what to do. And oh yeah, the communists. Why in Russia do they want to get rid of churches and Christianity? Because I thought government and religion were entirely two different things. Now, maybe my parents didn't quite understand it, or maybe they did understand it, but didn't think that I would be able to understand it, and maybe they were correct, because I didn't know that the government and religion have been both just different groups of people, just different gangs of people who have been trying to win over the hearts and minds of the population, trying to control the minds of people. And that's why the government, when it took over in Bolshevik, I'm experimenting by pronouncing things wrong, Bolshevik, communist Russia. And by the way, Rus, right? It took me a while to figure that out. Rus is Ross is Roth. It means red. It's mad, isn't it? I mean, maybe everyone knows that, but just to have it out there, So the Ruskies are the Redskis. So there's some truth in that, even though they're probably not the bad guys, but I know they're not the good guys anyway. But anyway, that was another thing my parents didn't tell me. The new let's call it government, right, of Russia post-revolution wanted to get rid of the Christian network of churches because it was competition for what they were doing. They wanted nobody else having the ear of the population. We'll tell you what to do, nobody else. And there definitely is a danger that going to church, going to Christian church, and even, it seems to me, even though obviously there are some negative aspects to this, but going to church or mosque can give somebody what I believe I got when I was younger than 4, instilled in me from having been read Aesop's fables and tales from Greek myth and legend, is the idea of personal heroism, not for a vainglorious type of adulation of the people when you come home. Although that aspect of the story did appeal to me, like say, Theseus goes off, slays the Minotaur, comes back, everyone's really grateful, and he's got a hero's return. Although it didn't quite go that way. But there was Jason on the Argonauts and things like that. I remember his return obviously was tragic with his father, Aegeus. I did a video on that. Anyway, let me not get distracted. Point being, religion might engender a higher mindedness in people. And that's absolutely something that what we now see as these pretenders to the throne of the world want to get rid of. And of course they'll all turn on themselves and cancel each other on the way. But that's why there's the attack on Christianity. And it doesn't mean, it turns out that the priests were all good in the end, right? Because obviously these are the bad guys, and that must mean all the priests were good guys. No, it doesn't mean that. But they're terrified that the good aspects of the Bible and Christianity and any religion might just wake up whatever dormant propensity there might be still in some of these sleeping fools for realizing that there's more to life than just bread and circuses, than just sports ball and whatever soma they're going to be feeding us, whether it's in, food pill or drug you out of your mind form. And painting your dragons. I'm aware that there is a story called Painting Your Dragons or something like that. That's not the one I'm talking about. There was a Chinese fable, and it seemed very much like it came in the same compendium of books, and there were ladybird books, which is ladybug. Ladybird is a ladybug in American English. But that was the publishing house anyway, and there was all these Aesop's fables and other stories for children. And one of them seems to be a Chinese legend. And it was about a boy. He was a peasant boy, and he was very good at art, and he loved painting dragons. But some wizard, he had, the way like there's a sort of a master and apprentice. So this kind of wizard gave him a magic paintbrush and magic paint pots. And the versions of the stories that I had didn't tell you what the moral of the story was. But I had no problem figuring out what at least some of them were. Because each one can have more than one. But with this one, I wasn't sure. And I'm still turning it over in my mind. But, I won't say to you what it is, and you can have a think about it yourself. So, because he was a peasant boy, he was, on the street begging for food and that kind of thing. And the wizard gave him the magic paintbrush, whereby anything he'd paint on the canvas would come to life. So he would paint himself a bowl of noodles, and then the bowl of noodles would come to life and he'd be able to eat it. And, obviously this fascinated me. I thought it was brilliant. And, I wasn't being avaricious, but I was just logical and sensible and clever, as far as it went for a child, right? I'm not trying to praise myself. Precocious, let's say. And I said to my mom, but Mom, why doesn't he just paint some gold coins? And then he can go and buy whatever he wants and he can be rich and whatever, Now, I wasn't trying to be greedy there. I was just trying to solve a problem. Right? I'm pretty sure that was my attitude to the thing, because I was always trying to point out the idiocy, right, of other people's long-winded or complicated, overly complex plans. And I was like, why couldn't you just fix the problem this way, right? And then the story can be over and we can all go to sleep, you know? Um, and well, if you did that, then the story would be over and the story would be over and we wouldn't really have had a pleasant time because stories aren't just about skipping to the end, right? They're about the journey just as much. I know it's such a cliche, but it's worth saying because, um, I didn't know all these phrases and they were useful to me and they might be useful to somebody in the future. Half the journey is in the getting there, or the journey is as important as the destination. And that's why sometimes if you drive somewhere, long, long, long journey, or walk there even, you appreciate it much better than if you just hopped on a plane and next minute you're there. So anyway, painting your dragons, he really liked painting dragons. He just got an aesthetic pleasure out of it. And but he didn't want them to come to life because they were dangerous, obviously. He wasn't sure if he could have control over them. I think that was an aspect of the story as well. He was afraid that if he would paint the dragons and they come to life, they might harm him or harm others or, burn the place down or whatever it is. And so I'm distracted there. I shouldn't allow myself to be distracted. I'm distracted by a comment. I'll come back to the comments now in a minute. So he came up with a plan, and he said, "I tell you what I'll do. I just won't finish, and I won't finish the painting." And now it occurs to me, actually, that's a trait that's very characteristic. This kind of the technicalities, the legal gerrymandering of the contract. Where you sort of reinterpret some aspect of it so that the whole thing's in your favor because you sort of counterintuitively or obtrusively or what's the word for it? Not ad nauseum, but ad absurdum, where you take things to their logical extreme, to the point where it meets absurdity. And there's that aspect to it, I suppose. But anyway, he said, "Look, I'll paint my paintings. I'll get a canvas. I'll paint this dragon. It's in my imagination. I want to put him down here, but I won't finish some aspect of him." So maybe he didn't finish painting one of the wings, or part of his tail, or maybe some of his scales, or didn't color in part of his foot, something like that. So I think it might be wrapped up, or there's not wrapped up, but a comparison to the story of Icarus. Icarus wasn't afraid to fly too high, and he had his comeuppance. There's also maybe some comparisons to be made to Jonathan Livingston Seagull, who knew that something innately inside him was telling him, "I shouldn't just fly with a flock of seagulls. I want to fly higher than the rest of them. I want to explore up here." And I think that's an aspect that's part of all of our characters and natures, all of us who refuse to be told by whomever or whatever just because they say so. So painting your dragons, I think for me, one aspect of it is just, look, for too long I've been sitting on my hands. For too long I've been worried about what if I make a mistake? What if I do something and I set it out flying there into the ether, and once it's said, once it's spoken, if it's live, you can't grasp it back. It's spoken, the word has been uttered, and there is something. I mean, I could record these and I could send it on, I could upload it, and maybe I could edit out some bit if it was no good, But there is a frisson, right? I don't mean to be sounding pretentious. It's just that's the word that kept occurring to me, and I think it sounds French, like if you're a French chef, just add in a soupçon, a frisson, un tout petit peu, a little pinch of this, that, and the other, this, that, and the other. That sounded good to me, so I'll say it again. But just that little, and a frisson, I think, has that element of, and I'm sorry to say it, but a salacious delight. When you're having a little entanglement with some woman in the in the in the red light, not the red light district, the Latin Quarter or whatever it might be, in gay Paris, but it's not so gay. Anyway, what do I want to say? And I don't want to now all the thoughts of Paris, the city of light, and Jim Morrison. I've done that already, and it's for a different time anyway. But listen, basically, painting your dragons, setting something free, and doing it live. There's something about it where you're forced to just say whatever you're going to say. There's an element of danger to it. And also, you might feel like complaining a lot and recording something and saying, woe was me and all that kind of thing. But that's not interesting, right? So you're sort of compelled to try and keep things tidy enough, keep things coherent enough, hopefully. But at the same time, it's dangerous. You never know what he's going to say next. I don't even know what I'm going to say next. I'm terrified I'm going to get tongue-tied and forget what I'm talking about and kind of go, oh, or sound stupid or say something stupid. But that's the diving board thing as well. And it's the scent of a woman. If you get tangled up, you keep tangoing on. And it's the diving board. Every time you click go live, every time you're speaking in front of people, whether it's over the internet or in public, you're nervous about it, but you push through that and you grow and you develop as a person. So I'm looking forward to these. I'm going to try and do one until I'm not doing one anymore. Once a week. And that doesn't seem excessive. And makes me feel better about, going a bit long, taking maybe 3 hours to meander around a few general points and try and stitch them together. So painting my dragons is an exercise in, I think, and I think there's many morals to this Chinese fable. I'll allow you to ruminate on it during the week if it might occur to you. Suddenly it might pop back into your head when you're doing something random. If you're just walking along or driving or whatever that might be, and you might go, painting your dragons, yeah. And you might have a new thought about it. So for me, I just think one aspect of it is I was always afraid to finish anything. I'm lazy. One of my many wonderful character flaws is that I'm lazy. Right? And I never finish anything. I start a lot of things, never finish anything. So something I'm trying to do is hold myself to a schedule, push myself to do something and to finish it. And you're compelled to open the mic and finish it at some point if you're doing a live stream. So there's that aspect to it. Now, I think I've got my preamble done and I'm looking at the clock and I think that I started about an hour and 10 minutes ago, maybe more. So I don't know how there's other people who seem to know all the rules of YouTube, what you can say, what you can't, and what you can get away with saying at certain times during certain live streams. I'm going to guess that we might be far enough in. I'm going to take a little break myself, right, from speaking, and I'm going to play one of my own videos first. And I'm going to not comment over it. I might comment after it. But I'd ask you guys not to comment too stridently on it. I don't want to be in the current affairs business, but this goes beyond current affairs. I know it happens to be in the current affairs more now, but this is something that has been on my mind for many, many years. And, I didn't just notice it in the country that I was born in. I didn't just notice it in the continent that I spent many happy times in. I've seen the whole continent of Europe change in a way that I look back and I sort of say, like, okay, people who were born in the 90s, they think that they're full adults. But if they, let's say if they're born in the early 90s, well, they would have been 10 years old before they were really paying attention. And by 2001, the world had changed incredibly massively. And 2001, as well as being a obviously very important point in world history, and particularly for the US and New York. But after that date, also in 2002, was the date that Europe changed its currency to the euro, so that all the individual countries, like Germany, got rid of its Deutschmark, France got rid of its franc, and other countries. I think Greece was the drachma, and Italy the lira, and they might have been more happy to get rid of their currencies, because the joke back then was like 1,000 lira was 50 English pence. So everybody was a millionaire in Italy, right? Just ridiculous. Anyway, that was something that changed Europe big time. And it was after that that the population started changing big time as well. So I said the word population, but please don't use any words that are any more keyword than that if you can help it. So I'm going to play this, and I'm going to not make any commentary throughout.
It's the third year of such large-scale gatherings outside Dublin in which candidates declare their fidelity to the Irish state and pledge to observe its democratic values. 132,000 people from 180 countries have become new citizens since 2011.
I can vote now, I can exercise my rights, my civic duties as an Irish person.
It's a very year of such large-scale gatherings outside Dublin.
All right, sorry, I'm back now, and I can't see any video when I'm playing this, even though I am playing video. So I'm going to try it one more time by adding it to the stream once more.
Declare their fidelity to the Irish state
If
and
not,
pledge to
just have to
observe
listen to
its
the audio.
democratic values. 132,000 people from 180 countries have become new citizens since 2011.
I can vote now, I can exercise my rights, my civic duties as an Irish person.
It's a very good achievement for me, and I'm so happy that I get it done today. So I'm proud to be an Irish.
Last thing I worry about, I wouldn't want to worry about that. That's none. My citizenship is more important than this, than Corona.
What inspired me is the discrimination, and the discrimination is very subtle. I'm black and I also have a scarf, and obviously most of the people I know speak with a funny accent, and I just felt that we have valuable skills to bring into the society, and we need to remove the fear.
We feel we are being discriminated because you put in CVs and you get turned out without reason. So these are some of the issues we are presenting to the politicians to see ways they can improve life for us.
We've wanted the members of the ethnic minority in County Meath, to get engaged and to understand the power of the vote that they hold. A number of them have become Irish citizens. But beyond the excitement of being able to travel without the need for a visa, they also need to understand that they are decision makers.
And the response was largely positive from those who took part.
Tonight's event has been so fantastic. I've gotten a very nice analysis, expressions from the party leaders, and I believe Ireland is moving forward.
And in typical Irish fashion, people were keeping their cards close to their chest.
So have you decided who you're going to vote for?
Yes.
Do you want to tell us?
No. I want it to be a secret.
Almost 4,000 people became Irish citizens today at a ceremony in the National Convention Centre. The Minister for Justice, Alan Shatter, told them that the country had been enriched by their presence.
They entered this room as the sons and daughters of 115 different nations. But after a few short sentences, they left as one, as Irish citizens.
I'm Irish, man. Thank you. So we have equal rights.
It was really amazing. It feels as like, wow, we are now Irish and this is our country now.
Why is it important to you that your mum is an Irish citizen?
Because she can join me where I go.
And what are you going to be when you grow up?
The President of Ireland.
4 separate ceremonies were held today to accommodate the almost 4,000 people celebrating their new national identity.
Since these ceremonies began last year, 55 of them have taken place, making 14,000 people Irish citizens.
And for some, it hasn't taken long to fit in.
Since I picked up this accent, I feel everybody saying, "Oh, you Irish, you're Irish, yeah, God." So just maybe I feel like I was always, a part of this country.
What's the first thing you're going to do as an Irish citizen now?
I'm going to have a few Guinness today, definitely going to have a few Guinness tonight.
I feel Irish. Come on, let's get. Come on, Satato.
My God. I'm very, very happy.
The next citizenship ceremonies are due to take place in October. Samantha Library, RTE News, Dublin.
Okay, can anybody tell me in the comments, were you able to see any video there, or was it just audio that you were hearing? So I'll continue going on anyway, and I know there's going to be some delay there, but I couldn't see any video from my end, and yeah. So I'll do now is, like, I know I've got a bit more to that, but I don't want to proceed unless excuse me. I don't want to proceed unless I can figure out audio only. Okay, well, thanks, Stephen. At least that reflects what I'm seeing here. I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to try again. But I'm going to right. Okay, your mind's eye so much, right? I'll tell you what then, right? I will leave that till another time, and I appreciate that. I think I can get you. Here's something else, right? That's basically the second part of that, and I think I'm going to be able to show video of this. So there'll be enough video now to, fill in the picture for you. Here we go.
September 1913 by William Butler.
Damn it, right? I don't know what it is, and maybe my computer needs a reboot, so I'm going to have to... I'll tell you what, I will premiere it here, right? But it's just going to be audio. No, I'll tell you what I can do. Maybe I can share my screen. Right? I'll try doing that. And I'm sorry for, bit of dead air here and technical difficulties and whatnot, as I'm sort of frantically looking through my folders here and saying, oh, can I play the video and then just share my screen? And it could be a bandwidth issue. But anyway, I think I'm nearly ready. And I'm not a good multitasker. It's one thing at a time for me. So yeah, exactly there, Matt. But don't get too hectic on the whole thing there, because I don't know like what the rules are here, but I know that I'm speaking the truth, and I don't mean any of these people any ill will. I wish them success, but I think they'd be happier in their own cultures, in their own countries, and then I could go visit them. We could all be friends that way. So yeah, I'm going to try sharing my screen and then playing this. All right. Yeah, and again, right, the reason why you're hearing a bit of silence there is because I'm trying to. I hate that I sound like somebody who doesn't know how to work a computer, right? So I can share this, I think. Yes, okay, so I have some video where I can see, and I hope it's going to work for you. Right, here we go. I'm sorry about this. I again see a blank screen here, so I'm going to try that one last time. I'm going to try a different approach here. I'm going to say share entire screen and then just play the thing. Yeah, go to the Arctic Circle. That's the funny thing. I mean, if I was from, and I'm just saying Uganda at random, I absolutely would not want to go above the tropics. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I would never be able to get used to that temperature. I just couldn't do it. It wouldn't matter what they're paying me. So I'll never understand it. But I think that they just must not love their countries enough. Or maybe they just, can be their what should be their loyalties to their own countries can be just overruled by the promise of better economy. As so many presidents said, like, it's the economy, stupid. Yeah, exactly there, Stephen. Well, anyway, it's a bit late now to be sort of saying, please put in like a milk or milk toast, MILQUE, or lukewarm comments. Yeah, I mean, come on. But at the same time, take it a little bit handy. All right, so now I'm going to try sharing my screen. There'll be a little hall of mirrors effect, but I'm going to play this. If it still doesn't work, I think I'd have to reboot my computer. But I'm not going to do that because then I'd have to end the stream and blah blah blah. But I'm going to share my screen first and then see if I can play this. Share screen, entire screen, share system audio. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good. Right, and there's a hall of mirrors effect here. But let's see if this plays. All right.
September 1913 by William Butler Yeats. What need you? It's dead and but let them be. They're dead and gone. And with O'Leary in the grave.
All right. Well, hopefully you can still hear me, and hopefully that video was visible to you. If anybody can let me know if they're able to see it, I'd appreciate it. I think what I'll do is, I will upload the full video that I tried to play a little bit later, and maybe during the week. And I'm working on some other things as well. Basically, my whole thing is in for a penny, in for a pound. Grasp the nettle or not at all. There's no half measures, and there's no safety in between. And I'll reiterate, my mother said to me that I may well find the Christian or Catholic religion. I know some people see them as very different, but my particular cultural flavor just happened to be that. And by the way, for a long, long time, I never knew that I was a Roman Catholic. I was like, a Roman Catholic? Is that what I am? I didn't know that. Is that what we are? So I know other people saw me as that. You can't help it. Listen, Matt, I appreciate it. It kind of gives me goosebumps as well. And I don't mean to be saying that as praise of me or myself or anything I did, right? It's just that's that tune, and it's called Maná na HÉireann, which means women of Ireland. And there's so many different variations of it. It was a tune written by, was it written by Sean O'Riordan? Or maybe he just made it famous or popular back in the early 20th century or late 19th century. But I think it's an old air. Look, I think, and I think a lot of you will agree with me as well. There's only, where can I start with this? When I was asking about, there's only 8 notes in an octave, right? Obviously, there's another octave above that, below that, and then there's the notes in between. But I sort of thought, well, if there's only 8 notes in an octave, then how can there be an infinite number of songs? There can only be a certain amount of songs. I was wrong, but I was kind of right in a way. I think that these tunes go back not just centuries, but millennia. And I think if you went back to the fields of Babylon, where we first met, you would hear the women picking the hay or the grass or the grain or whatever it is, tilling the fields. I think you'd hear them humming the same tunes. So there's a lot of tunes that are based on Maná na HÉireann, and a lot of different people who have songs, but they don't say they're covers of them. They just say, "Oh yeah, well, it's a similar air." So I must make a playlist of that and put it onto my publicly shared channels. But what I was going to say was the idea of people thinking that they can just hide in the middle ground somewhere. They'll keep chipping away at that. There'll be no more hiding. So the way I see it is, might as well get hung for a sheep as a lamb. I'm not trying to say anything to win favor with anybody, curry favor, like Renfield in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Oh yes, master. What do I need to believe today? Who do I need to pretend that I think are stunning and brave and lovely today? Just this creepy, what's the word for it? Like, not just insidious, but it's a serpentine thing. Maybe it is supine or supercilious. I think that's it. Right? They come crawling up to their master's feet, bootlickers. Oh, master, I just love people who are gay. I just think they're so inspiring. F off, right? Because you know they're being disingenuous. And that doesn't mean, just because I can point at him and say he's a crawling hypocrite, that doesn't mean I want to go out and kill anybody or hate anybody. You know, I mean, maybe there's some people, but it's not because of any particular characteristic. It's because they're so disingenuous. And I have met some people who are gay, and some of them seem to be all right, decent people, right? But I'm not here to tell you how decent I think some of them are. But it's the ostentatious ones, just like the guy at the top of the church. Oh God, I'm so sorry for all my sins. You know, that kind of person. Oh, I'm so flamboyantly hilarious. I'm the life of the soul of the party. No, you're not. You're somebody who hates yourself and just trying to adopt an identity. And I wouldn't be able to recognize it so easily if I didn't have all these, I suppose, not propensities for being a flamboyant Mardi Gras type person. But if I didn't recognize the need for attention, everybody feels that they need to be liked and have attention. And when people, listen to me and think whatever it is I said is great, although obviously, look, there is still that, there is an element of that, but I have to try and tamp it down. But people who make no effort to tamp it down, and they just say, what do I need to believe today? And I've seen people, they hear somebody saying something that seems to go down well, and they just parrot that. Most people are parrots, and it disgusts me. And these people who control us, then they'll keep like that, closing in walls in that rubbish compactor. That what do they call it? A dump or a refuse or whatever it is. I can't think of the right word. Sewage compactor in Star Wars, and the walls are closing in. That's what they're doing, So my mother told me that I would find at least if nothing else, the morality in Christianity useful to refer to in times of trouble. That reminds me of a Paul McCartney song. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. Now I'm only saying that so I can buy me some time to look up this quote. And it's, I know thy works. Thou art neither cold nor hot. I would thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. And I like the word spew there. Obviously, with different variations of the Bible, you're going to get words like spit instead of spew. But do you notice that whenever they want to denigrate people who they think are their political or ideological or religious enemies, they say, "Oh, he has written a screed and he's spewed his screed all over the internet," because again we have some kind of not just alliteration, but we have a kind of an onomatopoeia. Is that right? The way the words kind of flow as well, it just gives you this idea that there's some kind of sewage spewing out of your mouth. But that's exactly what apparently Jesus said, and it's in, did I say it's Revelation 3, chapter 3, verse 15 to 17. But apparently Jesus said this. But maybe he said it in, I'm looking down now here, there's a message to the church in Laodicea, if I'm pronouncing that right. Laodicea. Sounds very Greek. But anyway, apparently Jesus said that. Basically, look, grasp the nettle or not at all. Get up on the diving board, jump in, or don't bother climbing up in the first place and then chickening out. Do and that isn't there a, I think there's a Macbeth quote, or it's Hamlet. It's Hamlet, isn't it? To be or not to be, that is the question, sort of thing. To I can't think of the rest of it, but it's like do or die. Isn't that the motto of some maybe it's some British I can't think of the name, the special forces anyway. The best or nothing, that's another one. Mercedes used that, just basically, and I know there's a military one, SH or get off the pot. So there's so much like that in life, and you could at least have respect for your mortal enemy if he sincerely believed in what he believed in, if he stood absolutely opposing you. But not all these milquetoast, shrinking wallflowers who have only got bravery when they've got people around them, and what they have is what they perceive as to be the multitude of opinion on their side. So I think I made the point there, right? And what I'll do now is I'll go back over the comments, catch up a little bit, and then if there's time before I go on too long, I will I'll tell a story that I keep meaning to tell. And you know, maybe I haven't told it because there's so many ones that I didn't want to tell, and like, who cares anyway, and blah blah blah, you know, because, well, one, I didn't want to say the name of corporations because I just kind of thought, look, for now, it's prudential, it's wise, just don't pick an enemy with some of the biggest corporations in the world before the time is right. Or pick a battle, I mean to say. And the other thing then is that, you know, there's a certain amount of decorum. I don't care about NDAs and whatever, you know. You know, what can they take away from you? You can't get blood out of a stone. But by the way, these people are physically dangerous as well. Which I'm saying because I'll leave that to another time, but it might come as a surprise to people that these people just use the boardroom to do their business. They do not, you know. But the other thing is, I didn't want to be just complaining about stuff because the thing is, honestly, who cares? Everybody's got their own complaints. So it has to be instructive of something, has to be illustrative of something. So a lot of the time I've been sort of saying to myself, look, is this worth telling? Is this something that people already know? And maybe it is, right? But as far as like a parable, it's useful to be reminded of these things in real world situations that actually occurred and that people constantly need reminding of. Because I think you might be like me, I'm guessing, that like me, you learn something, it's current with you, it stays with you, it really rings like a tuning fork or like a Liberty Bell. But as time goes on, if you don't refresh the memory of that, the memory becomes a bit more dull and the intensity isn't as sharp with you, and therefore the sort of determination to keep going and not let the bees get you down. You know, never let them grind you down. I need, you know, to have true grit, I need to be reminded of exactly how despicable these people are. So that's why it might be worth telling. Anyway, I really like Anne Heche's liver dilation nearly as much as I like the space Ferengi guy. Or maybe I like them both equally. So, okay, I'm going back here anyway. Where can I go back to? So true, Crumley. And Stephen Crumley says, might as well put them on screen if I remember. Read some lesson plans for teenage students from 100 years ago, and it would be like master's degree level. Yeah, I absolutely agree that compared to our modern students. Yeah. I'm not going to go long on this, but I'll just say, if I get to my story, I better say this, right? So I was never a teacher, but I taught adults, full adults, sometimes, you know, in their 30s, sometimes in their 20s, sometimes in their 40s and 50s. Because I would have a mix of people, and these were people in the corporate world, and I was teaching them how to do their job. And I don't want to get any more specific than that. But what I found was, oh my God, these people are supposed to be white collar workers, and they can't read or write. It was as basic as that. And they just wanted everything spoon fed to them. Whereas if I wanted anything spoon fed to me when I was in junior school, you know, I would have got a clatter on the side of the head, or what teachers used to often do is throw the chalk duster at you, you know. And if you got a clacker on the side of the head, well, you know, you should have been paying attention, or you shouldn't have been letting your brain cells go to waste, you know. Use your grey matter, that kind of thing. So we would have been horribly embarrassed to basically not have a certain standard of sentience. And again, the stories that I wanted to be, it wasn't supposed to be like, oh, here's me so clever and look how stupid other people are. But there came a point where I had taught enough people, and look, they weren't all like that. And some people did surprise me with some of the things that they knew and how competent some of them were. But at least half of them, I did wonder, like, I mean, these people have families, they drive cars, I have to share the road with them, I have to share a society with them. And these people are like blinking idiots that they literally, I don't know how they managed to survive several decades in life so far and not have very serious accidents, because they were like Walter Mitty's. They were walking through the world blind and just incapable of any thought unless they were told to do something. And these were, you know, supposedly people of my own society, right? Let alone importing people from other societies that we might think, oh, well, we're cleverer than them. You see, in trying to lift up the rest of the world, I don't know how it is we've fallen down so far. And I began to get very, very worried. And so this is why I knew, okay, this cannot. Our society is going off a cliff in a hurry. And it's just we haven't hit the bottom yet. And this was before the VidCons. You know. So anyway, look, I'll catch up with some of the comments here. So that is so true. So many people agreeing with you that 100 years ago, people in junior school or teenager would be doing master's level. And look, I can say myself, I think that my parents both learned not just Latin, not just Greek, but all the myths and legends, the adult versions of them, and everything to do with Greek culture and all that sort of stuff. But not to be clever, but just so that they, you know, they knew. Do you know the way in a certain culture, right? If I've seen a movie and you haven't, and I'm trying to say to you, oh, it's just like this happened in a movie. Well, that's unfortunate. That's our culture. So I remember one time I was saying to a girl, oh, do you remember the Fall Guy? And he's doing this, and he's in his bath at the end of his episode, and he's smoking a cigar, and he'd always do this somewhere up in the Hollywood Hills. He'd be in his hot tub, smoking a cigar, and this girl said, the Fall Guy. And then I realized, oh, she's like more than 10 years younger than me, so she's never seen it. Damn it. And I realized then, okay, there could be this huge cultural gulf now where I'm saying a lot of things. I'm making references to what I think is contemporary or things that I grew up with. And I'm going to have to find a different way to cross this not intellectual, but cognitive gap. Because otherwise we're not understanding each other. I don't know how to paint these pictures otherwise, you know? And there was a common shared culture, I think, throughout all of Europe until relatively recently, where everyone was just aware of all the standard things that, say, like, you know, Ovid would have written in Roman times. And, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to pretend that I've read Plutarch or whatever, right? I've just heard of him and vaguely know some of the things he might have said. But adults in the adult world seem to make reference to things back and forth so that adults knew what level they were on and what they were talking about, and kids wouldn't have had a breeze. Do you know that kind of way? Or they'd make reference to something that would happen in a Shakespeare play or whatever. Whereas you're not going to get that now. But they would have all done that in school as a matter of course. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have had to go on and do a liberal arts degree. Whereas, of course, nowadays, anyone who's doing a liberal arts degree, well, you know, they ain't learning that anyway, because they're learning colours of rainbows, but they're not learning Richard of York gave battle in vain. All right, I better move on. And another reason why I was nervous about these is because I didn't want to come across as a pretentious prig, you know. I'm not saying, oh yeah, everyone's so uncultured. I'm uncultured. I know a tiny smattering of something or other, and then I have to go look it up occasionally. But what I've learned is it doesn't impress anybody in the room if you start going on about stuff that nobody knows anyway. What's the point? But there's a lot of rich culture to be mined there, and to, who knows, right? If the world keeps going, it irks me so much that everything history keeps going in circles. But if there's to be another renaissance, well, we better dredge up the Greek and Roman stuff again, because there's a lot of really good stuff there, obviously. So anyway, Lily Gazoo, damn it, says college students today can't answer 8th grade graduation questions. Yeah, obviously. I think a lot of people now have seen like the Jay Leno. There's a fellow on Fox News who does one. Jesse something or other, Jesse Walters. He does some, and so did Mark Dice. His are brilliant. You know, man on the street, vox populi type things. Pretend that they're asking their opinions and things, and then Fleckus Talks is another guy, and then he highlighted some other dude, his name I can't remember, but he'd ask people stuff like, so can you name a country other than the USA? And they'd go, New York? And he'd go, yeah, this kind of stuff. Just amazing. And they'd go, oh, wow, really? Did I get it right? I was only guessing. And then he'd say things like, what continent is the United States in? And they'd kind of go, oh, the continent, is it Maine? And he'd go, yep. And they go, all right, oh, brilliant. I didn't realize how clever I was, because they've been told they're clever all their whole lives. I like this. The Congo crackpot. Right. That's something I wanted to bring up, and I'll leave it till a little bit later, but I'll have to shoehorn it in, but I'll say it now in case I forget. Idi Amin, turns out he wasn't such a bad guy after all. Right? I'll leave it at that for now. But if you have a look in the, if I forget to mention it, if you have a look in the description of this video, you'll see some Idi Amin short links, and further research is required based on those shorts, I think. Now to see, yes, okay. Well, maybe I don't have to read out anything. Fascinated with the moon and Polaris for the last few years, tried to learn and find that the most brilliant info I find is from hundreds of years ago. Tycho Brahe, that's a new one of me. I don't know that, but I must look into it. Religion should match the people. Yeah. It certainly should not be foisted on people anyway. And certainly not in the way that our technocratic dystopian would-be overlords are attempting to do. Find it unbelievable, says Stephen Crumley, how people like Tycho Brahe discovering everything he did way back then. It's absolutely incredible. And like me, Matt says, I'm not familiar with Tycho Brahe, Stephen, but I will be before the end of the day. Good man, Matt. And May's Mind says, a lot of the good parts of Christianity came from the pagan religions. I think we can certainly see that, and we can see that with a lot of the symbols, it subsumed at least Egyptian symbols, and so therefore there must be something from Egypt as well. But look, isn't this the way I suppose it always goes? Look, gather whatever we want from the old part, turn it around, make it new, and now we own it. I made that. You know those memes. I did this. You know, so who knows what's true? Other than I suppose what we can figure out from ourselves, and I'll say the 3 C's, right? Is something consistent within itself, or does anything contradict, or can you corroborate something with something else? That seems to be a pretty obvious part of scientific methodology. And religion nor nothing else should be immune, or what's the right word for it? Sacrosanct, or still trying to think of the right word. Impervious, let's say anyway, to testing with the tuning fork of truth, which is just scientific method, which nobody needs to be told. We knew more about the stars and constellations in 1500 as a society, as our modern society does, or then our modern society does. That is unless you believe the billions of trillions of universes, the billions and trillions. Listen, I'm going to say I loved Carl Sagan. And I don't know for sure that he was a bad guy just because he was, somebody who had an early life, or an earlier life than some people, right? But anyway, I tell you what, I really, really admired him when I was a kid, and I thought he was great, and he was like the astrological or astronomical father that I thought I wanted or deserved. But look, I'll tell you something. In his book, right, he warned against the technological autocrats that are trying to make themselves be in ascendancy and in power at the moment. Lots of great quotes from him. I think that if so far the worst thing that he's done is give the world Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's all I can put my finger on. So I'm going to say, until I know any different, until somebody can prove to me, I'm going to say, look, he's one of the good guys. Matt, oh man, you're going to have a blast reading about him. This dude was an absolute legend. His observations in the late 1500s are still considered the most accurate of his time. Amazing. I've heard of Copernicus and is it Huygens and some other dude, but not. Well, of course, Galileo. But I was thinking of Nederlander guys. But I was thinking like, oh, is Brahe? Could that be Dutch? But maybe not. I mean, I don't know. Sounds like it could be Germanic. Sigma level no to sing. Natural born noticer. I don't know if that was in regards to me or somebody else. NBN. All right. Space G, you cracked me up. I mean, Mr. Ferengi. Damn it. Well, hopefully we're far enough into the stream at this stage. What do you think about gold pressed latinum? I don't know about that, May's Mind. I'm going to have to look that up. Our pellet rifle scopes have more zoom. I should really read ahead on these than the telescopes they had in the 1500s. So I don't buy any of the multiverse theories either. It's no different than theoretical physics. Yeah, and it seems to me as if the something nebula was just created in the Middle East sometime around the Middle Ages. So I think a lot of it could have been just makey uppy. I think there's elements of truth to it. I don't know, right? And I hate to be an agnostic about it, but I'm not saying whether I don't know. I'm just sort of saying quite literally, I don't know whether the world is round or flat. And I know that there is fisheye lenses, and I know that the man jumping from the Red Bull thing, the horizon was flat there. It was just a fisheye lens made it look round. The other camera showed it was flat. So I haven't been up there. I haven't had a look myself. And even if I was up that high, I'm not sure that I'd be able to trust my eyes. So I'm aware of the experiments of putting poles into the ground and all that. I'm reserving judgment. But I think aside from all that, I think the most important thing is people think for themselves and experiment for themselves. And that's why I like the flat earth theorizers, as long as they're doing their own experiments and they're not just jumping on a new religion and going, oh, this is the correct thing, how dare anybody who doesn't believe this, well, then you're just the same as the other people who force me to try and believe things. Spice does make the meal more palatable, says Matt. Lily Gazoo says, everything in the world has a spirit that can be released by its sound. Oscar Fischinger. Release the sounds. Well, look, I mean, I like the idea that I appreciate Lily's poetic sensibilities. The other thing that I wanted to say was that the word I'm reaching for is cymatics. And so you can visually see how sand or grains on top of a loudspeaker or a membrane stretched over a loudspeaker will make certain patterns, and it's fascinating. I was just trying to see if I was not muted or whatever. I hope I'm not muted. Okay, good. I just had to skip forward to the end there to see if anyone was telling me if I'm muted, and I hope not. So I'll move on there now, and Lily says, all of my grandparents, I'm just trying to catch up a little bit near the end, aunts and uncles had to leave Ireland to make lives. They could only dream about moving back. I'll take you home again. Kathleen would be my great aunt Kathleen Cry. Yeah, well, Kathleen is such an Irish name. It's a crying shame. Everything. And of course, they pretend like, oh, well, because Irish people left Ireland and went off to America or Australia or other parts of the world and were handed nothing and worked for whatever they got, that this means they must now give away their homelands. Obviously outrageous. But the people that we're trying to discuss or argue this with, they're not arguing in good faith, although they'll say that about us. So, I mean, if we're trying to convince anybody, it's all the lukewarm people in the middle, but they don't want to be convinced of anything unless they think that it's the majority opinion anyway, in which case they'll readily adopt it. And in order to get them to think that the opinions they hold aren't the majority opinions and that there's new majority opinions, we would need to be in control of the media. I never thought that you could interfere with the democratic process by simply telling people things or telling people who the right candidate is they should vote for. I never thought that you could get somebody to turn against their natural inclinations towards being attracted to certain people and then be attracted to other people instead. I never thought you could do that, but it turns out people are so easily influenced because they might have a mind, they might have been born with one, but they don't use one. It's just much easier for them to they think it's much easier to be told what to do. They want to be told what to do. That's why we're in such an uphill struggle. And you could equate everything to the multi-headed hydra. How can you battle against this beast when it's telling people what to do, it's in control of their finances, and every other aspect of their lives? So they have the full carrot and the full stick. I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but to thine own self be true anyway. Like maybe they can have everybody else, but they won't have me. And just to say then, I mean, obviously I don't want to touch on too many electrified rails in the one live stream. But if you look in the description of this video, you'll see some interesting videos there of the Arizona democratic process. I'll say it that way. And just you can watch those short little videos as well. And the funny thing is, like, interfering in a process, they never defined what that was. Like back in 2016, when all of a sudden the blue people, and like many of them was my friends, I was going out with a girl at the time, who was a registered blue person. And I thought, like, oh, well, obviously, though, like, we have an understanding between each other that far supersedes that. And I was fooled to think that. It's just incredible. And the thing is, it means nothing to her anyway. She hated the people that, were from her environment. She didn't like them. So I'll just say this, maybe I'll go into it another time, like, if it's instructive. But she didn't dislike them because she disagreed with them. She just saw those people in her natural environment as competitors to her. Those people who are like ardent leftists, with the real short hair and the blue hair and the nose rings and whatever. So I thought she was the opposite of that. No, she just saw them as competition. It's just incredible. And it should have meant nothing to her, but that was her environment. That's the people that's who she felt was her civilization. Those are the people who she cared about, what they thought of her. So she would have had to have towed the party line. And as far as, interference in a process, she was always complaining that, Mr. T was so evil and the people in Russia were interfering. And I never would define, like, what form did this interference take? And never made any distinction between, like, physically changing the pieces of paper that go into the box, or preventing pieces of paper from going into the box, or getting rid of boxes that have the wrong mark on the pieces of paper, Or was it just that people were getting on Twitter and saying things that might influence some of her people? And I think that's what it was. Or she didn't make any distinction between the two. Just incredible. And she was an intelligent person, claimed to have an IQ of 130. I thought it was important to have somebody who you could discuss things with, you'd have some substance to your relationship. But this is why I say I'd much rather have somebody who was, not so high in the IQ, but true to themselves, thought things through, didn't believe in things just because, but demanded evidence. I don't know what IQ you need for that. Just to have, like, integrity. Because it's a level of delusion, of being able to convince yourself of whatever you like as and when the moment is convenient. And speaking of which, and it gets me back on topic here, Matt says disingenuousness is another form of lying. Yeah. It's a character trait that I think is what informs the way you live. You live in the lie. Revelations 3:9. Well, I looked that up. It's what Mr. Ferengi says. I'll do a quick look up. I might as well. Revelations 3:9. And it says, "Behold." Right. This doesn't surprise me, but okay, fair enough. "Behold, I will make them of the..." And what word can I use? I'll say temple. Right? Might be less triggering. Temple of Satan. Which say they are Ferengis. God. And are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. I'm going to be careful of that, by the way, the last stanza there, because, or maybe not stanza, the last line, because the burning desire to have your enemies come to your feet and lick your boots, it's not a healthy way to be. And so I'm going to try and not think of that way. But anyway, Revelation 3:9 there. No wonder it's one of your favorites. And listen, by the by, I don't know what the difference between a temple and a synagogue is. Do any of you? But don't tell me in the stream. It's just an idly wondering. And you're going to send me more based cartoons. Do you know what I'd love there, Mr. Ferengi? I would love if you started making it, because you are a great speaker. And you're very forthright. I would love if you started making some of your own videos. Just put your thoughts out there. You don't have to put your face up there. I'm not doing anything like putting my face up there at the moment, by the way, because it's not going to add anything to the stream particularly. But at some point I might. When I've got no more roof over my head and it looks like a nice gulag, I might say, oh, I'll get in like as an early adopter. Janus Wallace is getting out of jail soon. That rings a bell, and I don't know why I'm feeling real stupid. But I don't know who that is. And there was, oh, by the way, Lily last week, I think it was saying IVM, and I was going, what's that? And now I know what it is. Don't anyone write it in there. It's something to do with horses. Telescopes are obviously fake, right? And Vingul, good evening there as well. The ocean actually fake. It's all fake. Fake and globo homogeneous. Were amphitheatres for the enjoyment of the plebs, or were they for control? Well, entertainment, as Brian from High Impact says, entertain and distract you from what really you should be doing, and dissipating the energy, what could be used against the government, into something harmless. And that's what sports ball is. And I'm going to continue to call it sports ball. It's a great way to, maybe one day get through. I think that one word might get through to man babies who are like, oh, great, we can go back to the sports ball. Do I have to wear a mask or not? I mean, back in the 80s, particularly in Britain, the English were known as the soccer hooligans, the soccer football hooligans, because they would, especially when they would go onto the European continent to have away games, they would have pitched battles in the streets. So English soccer hooligans were not well liked in Spain. But all of that was perfectly fine as far as the British government were concerned, because, well, they didn't stamp it out. They did have, police pitch battles sometimes at home, but they were happier for them to get rid of their energies that way than actually walk into Westminster or Downing Street. I think I'm gonna check the time again now. Yeah, I'm coming up, I think, on 3 hours. No, 2.5. I'll go another little while. I might get my story in. I'm going to take a break here now. I think I'm going to try and play one more video. If it doesn't play, I'll go straight onto my story. Now, Mr. Ferengi saying it'll GRT BND so quick. I hope I'm not banned already. Your autism will not censor yourself. All right, okay. So anyway, right, I think I'm caught up there, and I'm going to try one more video here. I tried to play this, or maybe I forgot to play this last time. The other one, the Ash experiment, I tried to play the last time, but I messed it up by muting my mic. And when I was playing something live off a browser tab, that muted whatever. Well, look, technical difficulties. You don't need to know how it goes. But I'm going to try this one thing here. If it doesn't work, I'll go on to my story. And
now it's
right,
very
okay,
similar to how the Soviets took over Czechoslovakia in 1948. You know, most of the countries in Eastern Europe, they just rolled in the tanks and set up their own government. But in Czechoslovakia, which had a very strong democratic tradition, it was done by election. They had elections, there's allegations of vote fraud, but they got a few communists into the government. Those communists were given key positions in the security and the justice portfolios. They used those positions to go after their enemies, like Obama did with the IRS, for instance, and like what we've seen in the Russiagate scandal, that the security organs were weaponized against people the government didn't like, or in case the previous government didn't like, to the point where all opposition was eventually squashed. And after about 3 years, the communists had so much power in Czechoslovakia, they basically declared a de facto government, and they were the power from that point onwards. And they had a one-party state until communism collapsed in the 1980s. So we're at that point now where the opposition, where conservatives are being persecuted, conservatives are being attacked, Republicans are being attacked and called fascists, they're being demonized and marginalized. We've had proof that the state was weaponized against enemies of the left. We have Antifa and Black Lives Matter running loose on the streets. We have massive big tech manipulation of our media, shutting out points of view they don't like. This is revolution. This is tyranny in the brewing. And if this election is not settled, there'll be no further opposition to this big agenda, and there will be no possibility to unite people to stage a comeback, because we won't have Facebook, we won't have Twitter, we'll be targeted by the IRS or the Justice Department or the FBI, and we will see a one-party state effectively set up in this country.
Right. Even though that was an excerpt, and I think that all of us will have to have a look at the full version of that because I haven't seen the full interview. I'll just give the guy a shout out though, who allowed me to discover it. His channel name was Audiobooks and Stuff. And just as well I downloaded it because he got himself banned again. And, I have a feeling that he's somebody who's going to come back again. And he puts up a lot of audiobooks and just whatever other stuff. And this was one of the things. So a lot of the stuff is very interesting and thought-provoking. Now, he himself seems to be somebody who is a little bit short-tempered. I remember trying to communicate with him over text once. He might have misinterpreted something I said and kind of brushed me off. But I don't hold that against him. He's probably aggravated and wound up all the time and just feels that he is fulfilling whatever duty he might feel or obligation he might feel to the collective effort. And Lily, thanks very much for letting me know there that you obviously were able to see it and hear it. Or let's say hear it anyway, because you said chilling truth, and it is. And even though it's not something that you didn't know already, or anybody here watching or later on playing it back wouldn't already know for themselves or be able to figure out, it always helps to hear it in somebody else's words, doesn't it? And to hear from the benefit of historical experience and hindsight, to sort of say, oh yes, it is true that human nature never changes. And unfortunately, as much as I would love to be able to say, and I will say that for a huge amount of them, causation does seem to be tied up there. There is a correlation. But there has to be a level of discernment. And I'm not saying that in order to get my sentence reduced whenever they come for me. Because, like, for example, like, let's just say with the Sam Bankman-Fried, right? The latest every single timer who has embezzled money, right? Oh, they're very good with money, right? Well, they do it to their own as well. I mean, people talked about Bernie Madoff. I mean, he was setting up, fake hedge fund Ponzi schemes. And I think people say, oh, he went to jail. Well, the reason he did, and I heard it said at the time, was because he did it to his own. And they, the attitude was sort of like, here, listen, you might do it to all the idiots out there, but don't do it to us. And so we're going to have to put you away because you did it to a lot of our own. There is a level of, and I would say we, other people could learn from this, like, especially like Christian people or Europeans, whatever, like, all of us would stab each other in the back, no questions asked. And it wouldn't be, to get a few billion. They wouldn't need a few billion. A couple of thousand would do it. Like, I remember back in the 90s when there was loads of the politicians here who it was being discovered that they were accepting brown envelopes full of money. And I thought to myself, right, they're actually handing cash to people. Okay, makes sense. This isn't a record of it. And they were doing this at the Galway races, particularly. High level politicians, people in the, ministerial cabinet positions, and the Prime Minister himself, all glad handing each other, mixing with corporate donors and this kind of thing. And I thought to myself, oh, is this just like they hand them a little taster of what they're getting? No, it was a brown envelope with like 5 or 10 grand in it. That's it. That's how much it costs to buy a politician. So when you've got like a super PAC, a political action committee, so you get a few people band together, and then you get a super PAC when you get a few corporations band together, and you go, hello, Mr. Congress there, Mr. So-and-so went to Washington. We got out of this the easy way or the hard way. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Now, let me dial this back a little bit. All of our own people, they don't need, Pelosi's billions or millions, let's say 80 million and counting. They don't need 80 million. A million would do perfectly fine. 100,000, absolutely. And you'd have brother against brother, no problemo. So, like, we shouldn't kind of go, oh, it's all their fault, because they couldn't do it unless our own were eminently corruptible. And I'm going to say that some of theirs have consciences, right? And one of them I'm going to name is a guy called Benjamin Friedman. And back in the 60s and 70s, it's a great speech he gave. I think that, if it's still on YouTube, it might be. It's a speech from some hotel. I think you might find that in the list. I don't have it to hand anyway. But I think he was one of the political advisors to Reagan at one point. He might have served in different administrations, but he felt a pang of conscience, and he sort of said, "I have to warn the people out there. I have to tell people like what's going on." He was a whistleblower, essentially, And of course, out came all the, and he was someone who was in early life, and he must have had a good upbringing in his early life because somebody was either born or had a conscience instilled into them and a sense of duty to the truth. So this is what I'm going to say. Look, it's not all on one side or the other, but correlation, and a huge amount of correlation, does invite investigation and should and very well ought to. But we shouldn't leap immediately to proof, but neither should we dismiss it like these idiot leftists who think they own the science and they go, correlation is not causation. In other words, dismiss any correlation, you see. I mean, what that is that runs counter to common sense, rational thinking. And of course, that suits them fine. Because we live in a post-truth world where up is down, left is right, or it isn't, or it can be, or it might be, or it might not be. We're living in maybe we're living in a quantum entanglement post-truth reality, where anything and everything is both true and false at any one time, whenever they say so, whenever it's convenient. Right, I'll get back on topic here anyway. I'll put some of the comments up on screen again. I think it's important to do that. So Matt says, is that clip in the links? It isn't, because the guy got himself banned. I will look for the full interview. If it's not available on YouTube, I'll put it on Odysee. Oh, by the way, have a look or go and sign up to my Odysee, right? Because I do have some, I think, good videos that I've done there that are exclusive to Odysee. And I think people would appreciate them, and you might be able to, listen to them only. There's not particularly in a lot of them that you need to see. And, you could treat it like a sort of an hour long or 2 hour long, nearly one of them is podcast. And it's just something different than just a regular YouTube video. So Chilling Truth says Lily Gazoo. So Matt, I will remedy it anyway. One way or another, I'll get you a link to something, either that or the full video, or both. So Matt knows who I'm talking about. Right, and you had the same experience as me. Good content, but lousy people skills. Yeah, he was fighting his own allies. Like, in other words, I hate to use that word because it's been abused and misused. Allies, But he was like a crazy guy in the trenches with you. He was going fugazi, attacking everyone all around him, the people who were with him. But he was a good guy. You subscribe to him, yeah. Now he's on BitChute still, as far as I know. Just saw a meme on that, stealing from your own tribe. Yeah, slow boy whiteboard today makes sense. The thing that is worst about our current social... Now, I'm going to have to get rid of something so I can read it here. And sorry about this, but there's something in my way. Oh yeah, I'll have to get rid of, sorry, the video here.
America right now.
Beg your pardon. Okay, the thing that is worst about our current social paradigm is that there's not even the option of discussing tyrannical situations with others in pubs or bars in order to enlighten others. Well, there certainly wasn't throughout the VidCon 2019 convention. And that was obviously by choice. There was no public house where we could gather to discuss things like men and women. If some of them were based like Lily, right? Because I always wanted, I don't want it to be thought that I'm not a sexist misogynist, as well as a bigot racist. I don't want anyone thinking that I'm not those. All right, so Matt says, I don't know. One second. I'm just going to take a drink of water. Yeah, so listen, we can't enlighten others, but of course, look, fighting an uphill battle anyway. People don't want to be enlightened, but a change of environment and a pub or a bar just might be the kind of place. And unfortunately, maybe so many places now are like sports bars where you can't have a conversation anyway. Matt says, if you're going to steal from the Ferengi, you should definitely rub the earlobes first. Yes. They liked that in the, what was it called? Well, they were in Star Trek, The Next Generation, but I think Deep Space Nine, they were more in it as well. Stephen Crumley says, people today are so deeply involved in the dichotomy that they can't even see any other option besides Group A or Group B. And look, I'll say this, right? I want to get on my story, so I won't wax on too much about this, but maybe it's a topic for another time. When I was a kid, and even now, the words are ringing in my ears. When I was a kid, people would tell me, I'm always trying to deal with the world as it should be rather than as it is. And then in my working life, plenty of people would say to me, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, settle for something, settle for some progress. But of course, isn't that what got us here? Vote for the least worst option. You wouldn't think it from the way that I am, but I am a perfectionist, but unfortunately the downside to that is I never get anything done. But I expect people to figure it out themselves. That's what I keep doing, right? And so many times in my life, I've just sort of said, well, if this guy can't see the obvious and stare him in his face, to hell with him. And with girls as well, she knows she's lying. Or she knows that she's done wrong, but she won't admit it because she's too proud or whatever. Or she thinks that if she admits it, that I'll have some leverage over her, or I'll have the upper hand in the relationship or whatever. So when it comes to points like that, and I kind of think, oh, we're playing head games again, then I go, right, well, unfortunately, that's the beginning of the end, and you might as well just skip to the end because there's no recovering from that. When people are playing mind games with you and trying to have leverage with you, and I won't say this because he'll say that, and blah blah blah, it's just over, and there's no point in explaining to them why, because then you're just fixing them for the next guy, right? So it's not in your interest. That's been my attitude. Hasn't made me happy though, I'll say that. I'm very disappointed, despondent, demoralized with all of humanity, really. And I don't, to the point where I don't think that they deserve a saving, right? So I shouldn't be upset about the current situation. Bring on the evil despotic overlords. But I know that they'll complain afterwards and go, oh, well, someone help me. Not just the women. I'm not talking about just the women. I've had it happen in real life. That's a story for another time. About men coming back to me and saying, oh, can you do something now? that's another story. Long after I'd warned them and they refused to listen to me. Never found anyone in the Seattle area who is like based, basically. Yeah, and I suppose it would be difficult. Seattle and anywhere along the West Coast would be difficult, wouldn't it? And yeah, Seattle is extremely groupthink as far as whatever the Dems say, then that's what we believe. Unfortunately, it's just infuriating. So Stephen Crumley says, but out of some 300 odd million of others born on the North American continent, apparently there's about 20 to 30 of us in total. We must be some special people. We're very special, Stephen. That's right. I hadn't considered that, Stephen. Okay. I wish I could find a couple dozen. So, this reminds me of the Dirty Dozen or the Magnificent Seven. So we could meet in person and discuss topics like this. I would love to be able to light the fire of freedom of others. Public speaking is extremely easy for me. Well, yeah, I'll get up and talk in front of people, and maybe one day we will be able to do that. And if we could do it together, of course, there'd be a certain amount of it's not just Dutch courage, but we would be good to help each other collectively. You do need a bit of a posse to back you up, especially if the audience doesn't like what you're going to hear or starts going, wait a minute, this goes against our programming. And what I found is you never know, even the most innocuous thing. You think you're playing it. That's why you might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb. You think you're playing it safe. It's amazed me what people can get triggered by. Like, and I was in some place in South Africa, by the way, in a real nice place, the equivalent of I don't let's say Beverly Hills or Rodeo Drive or some nice restaurant type place like that, right? Believe it or not, in South Africa, in the Western Cape, and very nice, peaceful, restaurant. There was outdoor dining. There was al fresco stuff, lights. The way they have lanterns strung from tree to tree and all this sort of stuff. You can picture it, right? And like a man, of my ethnicity, although I say like he was probably, he might have been out of Dutch or German stock, but oh boy, did he get triggered! Like he just tried to make conversation with me, by saying something like he was sitting at another table and maybe he was on his own, I think, and trying to get in with us, and he said, "Oh, isn't it awful what's happening in the US?" And I went, what's happening exactly?" And he went, "Oh, and I might as well say his name, Donald Trump, and the way he's like destroying the whole country and all this kind of thing." I went, "Oh, really?" And I thought he was joking. Like I honestly thought he was being sarcastic and pretending to be a woke dyed in the wool blue lib. And but then it dawned on me he was serious, like, and I was kind of smiling at him as if to kind of go like, "Oh yeah, good one," like, and then I sort of said, "Oh," and maybe obviously the expression of my face changed to show that I was realizing that he was serious, and therefore had a look of simultaneous concern and disgust, and I was like, "Oh, really? Like, what do you think he's doing or has done?" And he was like, "Oh, all the things, all the things that he's destroying the country." And I was going, "Oh, really? What did he do?" "Well, and he hated that he was being put on the spot. And he got up off his table, came over to me, and sort of started shouting at me. And I stood up, and he was getting right in my face, like going red in the face, spitting at me, like it's just incredible. So anyway, I'll move on. I wish I could find a couple of dozen or so we can meet up in person. Public speaking is extremely easy for me. Ace of Spades HQ website has gatherings sometimes, usually hundreds of miles away for the closest one, says Lily. BertariaTimes.com might have some options for meeting others. Yeah, I guess so. I think I said the last time somewhere that I think Owen is generally good. I haven't listened to him in a while, not because I dislike him or anything like that, but it's just that I don't know, no particular reason. I just fell out of the habit of it. But I heard recently, like, that he took a lot of money for buying land, and maybe the accounting on that wasn't so perfect, and maybe the whole thing didn't work out just so. I don't know. There's something about it doesn't sound quite right to me, but I'm going to reserve judgment on that. And I'm not trying to impugn him either. There's a girl, by the way, if I can think of it, I'll put the link, and I just can't think of her name. She does a brilliant Owen Benjamin impression, and she's a girl. It's just that she condenses everything he says into about 2 or 3 minutes. Fantastic. I'll put it in as a comment, I think, or no, I'll put it into the description if I can edit it, or one or the other later. It's just very funny. I don't think she likes me because I might have tried to say something that was sexist, but maybe not. But she hasn't replied to my comment. Nonetheless, I appreciate her comedic work, comedic stylings. Freedomcells.com, says Lily. John Bush channel, he interviews people creating business and community. Well, sorry I didn't call that out at the time there, Lily. Right, listen, I'm up to, what am I up now? 2 hours and 2.5 hours and some change. There might be time. Otherwise, I'm going to have to keep pushing this off till other times, right? I'm going to tell this story now. And it's just to get it done, right? It's annoying me now that I haven't. So I mentioned that I was working for this massive, globo, homogenous, money is no object to us, we own half the earth anyway, corporations, all right, to set the scene. And in there, I would just, to cut a long story short that I could go down another tangent, I would just say that everybody works in there to greater or lesser degree are evil. Even the people who have pangs of conscience, sometimes they always go with the flow, and the current is massive. So when you have a corporation that's got, it literally has the ability to spend billions whenever it likes, you can't fight against that. And people ultimately want to keep their jobs, and they find ways to post hoc rationalize whatever it is the company's telling them to do. And as I said to you before, they have control over their lives outside of the corporation as well as inside. Total control. So that's why it was no surprise to me that they said, right, listen, we own everyone in all corporations, inside and outside their lives. So let's just make ourselves known to the world. We own everyone, right? So that's to understand the level of what we're talking about here. And so at each level, then you have all these people with all their little pernicious plans and, planning how to stick daggers in your back for their amusement or their career advancement because they've got all these super complex plans. And I just can't do that, right? That's not, I might be somebody who's intelligent, but I do not have the IQ for that. All the little machinations and the planning, I have no time for that. It hurts my head. I can't do it. So I'm stupid in that regard. I'm not clever enough to keep my cards to my chest. I just thought it would be a nice thing if I just said what I meant and meant what I said. You do not want to do that in the corporations. I was too much of a fool. I opened my mouth all the time when I should have kept my trap shut. And so I was a liability because in whatever room I was in, I would point out when people were making mistakes. When people would say something that wasn't true, I'd say, that's not true, and here's why. You do not make friends doing that way, right? So the way they deal with people like that in the corporation, especially if you kept your bib relatively clean, and they might think to themselves, we could have legal problems with this guy. He might feel that he has some kind of principle point to stand on, and he might be the kind of person who would accept a Pyrrhic victory rather than just cut his losses. So they said, well, we'll use the tried and trusted method of setting him up to fail, giving him a poisoned chalice. Those are two things they talked about, that kind of thing all the time. Right? So if they'd send me on a project or to do something, Muggins here, like my naivety told me that they gave me an objective and therefore they wanted that objective done. No, nobody else thinks things in that way. They feather their own nests, deliberately cause something to explode in the sense of have a calamitous failure, but have a scapegoat lined up so that they're able to blame it on somebody. And I guess we better say, obviously, Bankman-Fried is that guy, right? He's not the mastermind. He just be told he was clever, but he has the propensity for that. He did what comes natural to him. So I learned what I did for my job by doing it, and I learned how to get better at it by thinking about what I was doing and why, and refining each and every process. To the point where they couldn't argue that I was competent at what I was doing, very competent, and a lot of other people weren't. And there comes some point in a corporation where they need to make some more than just a sort of a nod and a wink, and they actually need to get something done. So if there's a new facility or there's a place where there's a lot of new people, they might want somebody who's got the experience of having done it themselves. And I think that even with all these people with credentials and degrees, and they've gone and done a course in it, and they have a new certification in it, these people are all hot air. They listen to somebody else telling them what to do, and the other person telling them what to do had never done the thing themselves. So they were, again, just passing on third-hand information that may or may not be true. And some of the theory is all right, but none of it's true until the rubber hits the road. And there was nothing that I did without knowing why I did it, and there was nothing that I would ever tell anybody to do without understanding why that was the way to do it. And sometimes there's more than one way to skin a cat, but I would say to them, look, there might be a few different methods. Here's a few different methods. Here's a few different things you could do. Use your own best judgment depending on the situation. The circumstances might be different. I would do my best to fully arm people. What I found is most people didn't want a choice of methods. Just tell me the best method. I'm hearkening back to earlier when I was telling you how people just want to be spoon-fed, even though my teachers would have said to me, like, I'm not going to spoon-feed you the answer. You figure it out for yourselves, So anyway, I got this job, an internal promotion in the corporation, to go over to, and I'll give you this detail, and I'll call it a Midwestern state, but I don't want to say which state. That was my first assignment. And during the interview, like for the job, they were saying to me, we're not sure if we want to give you this job. There's other people we're thinking about. We might hire externally and blah, 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 But they had it all planned out. They were setting me up to fail. And as soon as they got the job, and, they were dragging their heels over that, they said, okay, now you have the job. How soon can you travel over there? And I went, I guess early next week. And I went, can you go tomorrow morning? This was 4:30 p.m., right? And I said, what? Why? And I went, just, the place is in a heap over there. Nobody knows what they're doing. It's just everything's messed up. You have to go over and fix it. and show everyone what to do, because nobody knows how to do anything. And I went, oh, well, what do they not know how to do? Maybe I can send them an email first or talk to somebody before I go over and get an understanding of what it is that they, what's their particular list of priorities, and is there a main thing that's causing them problems? But there's no time for that. Just get on a plane, get over there, And of course, I have to go home to a rush hour traffic, pack a suitcase, get up early the next morning and get on the plane. And I get over there and things aren't like they said. They were setting me up to fail, obviously, by not giving me any information about what the problem is, telling me to solve it, find out what the problem is, and then apply a solution, right? Without giving me any authority either. So I was very nervous. But I found out anyway. They said to me, "Don't worry, you won't be on your own. We're sending another fella over with you." I went, "Oh, good, good." And then I found out who the fella was. I went, "Oh no, not this guy," because he was a liar and a sneak and a cheat and just the most despicable, disingenuous person you could ever think of or be as unfortunate to meet. So I'm just going to put a few more of these comments up on screen here while I'm chatting there. Take a little pause there. I used to rather enjoy listening to Owen Benjamin, says Stephen Crumley, and I just fell out of the habit as well. He's quite hilarious. He is. Although, again, right, if I had to spend time in his company all the time, he might be a bit overbearing. I have yet to see him change since I found him in 2018-ish. He seems rather legit. I would say that. He's been consistent, and I do think he is legitimate. And as far as exposing Gavin McInnes and his prank about getting arrested by the FBI but really going on holiday to France, while people allegedly, as far as we know, are languishing in internment. I'll use that word instead of jail. On account of taking a visit to a museum section of well, you know what I'm talking about, right? In early January. So I'll give Owen Benjamin a lot of credit for that. That alone, I think he has a conscience. Matt says, "Your gut. I always trust your gut. It's the spirit. It's the force." I think so. I think we know if we listen to our inner conscience. And Matt says, or Stephen rather says to Matt, 100,000%. And Lily says, "I know Owen because I worked in Port Orchard near where he lived in Gig Harbour, and I remember when he used to call it his address in Gig Harbour, or his PO box rather. He gave me his number. Normal guy, but an entertainer on screen. Yeah, he is an entertainer. Look, he's a certain character. That's it, right? And maybe you wouldn't want to, if you knew him in real life, place all your faith in him. But I think nobody's perfect. But as a percentage wise, he's mostly a good egg. And that's interesting that you know him and you met him around that area. But look, don't want to geolocate you too much, all right? I'll carry out my story, otherwise I'll never get this done, right? And at this stage, it feels perfunctory, but I don't want to tell it like just to have to tell it. So here you go, and there you are. There's a story, right? Like Ronnie Corbett, there's a getting there, and we'll get there, and it'll be round about 3 hours, and we'll wrap it up then. Just taking a quick drink of water. So I get over there anyway, into this. I'll try and leave it unnamed Midwestern. I'll call it United States of America. And oh yeah, it was like planes, trains, and automobiles, because you couldn't get there, or we could get there, but it wasn't so easy to get there by a direct flight. So we were supposed to either get to another airport in another state and then get a prop plane. And I went, oh geez, no, because at that point I was still a little bit afraid of flying, and the weather was bad. It was snowy. Snow was forecast, and I said, oh, no, we'll rent a car. But of course, I knew that it was going to be bad, like, driving interstate, but not interstate, but from one state to another, but long enough, like with this guy, But I thought, hey, listen, I think I'd previously traveled with another fella from work and got to know him well and didn't like him beforehand, and turned out we were all right. That can happen a lot of times, You go away, maybe it's like fellas, you go away hunting, you come back, you know each other better, and you have a newfound respect for each other, Didn't happen with this guy. And like I'll tell you, right, this was the way his character was, right? One of the things was, I might as well tell the beginning and the end of it more or less in a way, right? I'll say this, right? Even though it's very specific. I'm going to say this because I'm going to want to tell stories about this later, right? So I worked in data centers, right? The big things at Google and Facebook and what else? Yahoo and not Yahoo, but you know, Amazon. Did I mention them? And Microsoft up in good old, well, near enough to Seattle. And what else can I say? Right. So in data centers are miles and miles and miles, literally hundreds of miles of cable, whether it be copper for electrical or data or fiber. And you have lots of electrical network switches. And I'll explain to you about data centers later, because even if you think you know them, you don't know them and you don't understand the scale of them unless you've not only worked in like some of the massive ones, but seen all of them around the world. And the scale is just something you cannot imagine. The power that there is just unimaginable. And the complexity is unimaginable. And anything you can do to save time doing one aspect of one operation in just things like, say, physical cabling will be able to be multiplied out quite literally hundreds of thousands of times in just one facility. Right? Now, this guy at one point was in charge of people who were cabling network cables up to switches, and there was a tool that made that easier and quicker to reach in. So when you've got loads of them, right, you can't get your even if you just got a normal size hand, right, you don't have to have thick fingers or thick fists. You can't reach in to disconnect one cable and put in another one, and you certainly can't with a live data center just pull out whatever cables you like so you can reach the cable you want. Oh no. So there was a special little grasping tool that could grasp onto one of these tiny little delicate cables and not move any of the others and allow you to put it back in. And you got loads of them. Like these switches, right? These network switches. If you buy like, you know, whatever is an expensive router or switch now, you know, you might spend a couple of £100 and think you've really invested. It's just a matter of fact that these switches, the real big ones made by Cisco or Juniper or Arista, right? I shouldn't. They're just big names, right? No need to get too much into the weeds on this, but they would cost minimum $500,000, right? You fully populate one of those with all the, well, I would call them line cards, but you can call them whatever you want. Fully populate one of those, you're talking $1 million. That's just standard price. And nobody balks at that price at all, right? And so obviously they're going to give you whatever accoutrements, accessories you want with it for free. And there were always these little reaching implements. And this guy was in charge of that, and he hid those. He had a drawer full of them, and he wouldn't give them out to any of his team members in case that their work would improve. Because he wanted it to be that anytime anybody made a mistake, he'd go down there and he'd go, oh, look, I did it. How come you can't do it? But he had this special tool. And he knew that if he gave that to anybody, they'd be as good as him at that. And even when he became their manager, he wouldn't just sort of say, well, because he couldn't go, oh, I found a big box full of these now, you can all have one. Right? He would rather that, you know, websites and servers and whatever else went offline because one of his underlings made a mistake so that would make him look good and competent by comparison, then empower everybody below him with the tools they needed to do their job properly and efficiently, safely and efficiently. You know, that's the kind of character you're dealing with here. Now, I hope I've painted a picture of that. Now, when I learned that about him, and I saw it with my own eyes, like the drawer full of these tools, I went, well, what the hell do you have a drawer full of that for? And then it dawned on me, I didn't need to know the answer. I knew, because I knew him. That's the people you're dealing with. And there's hundreds of thousands of people like that in corporations and all around the world, millions of them. And you would think, I always thought in my naivety, people like this would be brought to justice when they're found out. No. They're promoted right up there because they know these people can be counted on to do exactly what the controllers want people to do. So anyway, Vingel says, he says, I'd be interested in hearing about how you ended up in America in the first place. If you want to tell the story sometime. Not asking for details. Yeah, obviously, yeah. But I'm glad you asked, and I will leave it till another time. But another time, and I'm going to get into this. And that's painting my dragons, you know. I don't think I signed any NDAs. I think anytime they tried to retroactively get me to sign something, I went, no, I'm not doing it. And they were like, oh, well, you will have to get HR onto you. It's like, do whatever you like, right? We had an agreement. You can't just keep coming to me and changing stuff, you know. And anyway, I said, look, I'm not going to tell tales and whatever, you know. I'm not going to tell anything to you that you don't need to know. This is a generic story so far. You know what I mean? I'm not saying anything about anybody in particular. This is not about me whining and complaining. This is going to hopefully be an illustrative story to let you know that these people are everywhere. And I consider these people to be the creatures that have inveigled their way into every aspect of our society. And I blame the people who thought it would be easier, if they didn't like these people, to promote them, get rid of them out of their department by promoting them, or saying, oh, he's a useful idiot. I can see the vices he's got a mile off. I can see that he can be absolutely counted on to do the wrong thing just when the moment is needed. So they use them as chess pieces in their own little personal game of building their own little empires within this massive empire. And the corporation is like a body hiding all this. It's like a shell, like shell corporations hiding a veneer of goodness, like their corporate logo and their advertising. We care about this, that, and the other. Of course they don't. We all know they don't. And all these little, what we would call sleevines inside it, stabbing each other in the back, plotting, scheming, all these little machinations, which I just couldn't abide. And I'm going to say I didn't have the cleverness for, didn't have the memory to be planning about what did I say to him and what am I planning about to do next week if he does this and blah, blah, blah. But that's what all these people occupied their time. They didn't do their jobs. Their whole job was, how can I cock something up and blame it on somebody else and then get a promotion and get him fired or demoted or whatever. So I'm over there and I'm thinking, right, these people are in trouble here and they don't know what's going on. And somehow they've, you know, as we always said, like, you know, they've been treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed SH1T. And they've heard, like, you know, I didn't know what they were told about me. And I wanted to disabuse whatever they'd been told, like, you know, some big shot or some guy who thinks he knows it all is going to come over and tell them what to do. So first day, they're all gathered in this meeting room, you know, but it's going to be like our classroom. And the other guy's with me as well. And he's keen to just get up on the whiteboard, start writing things. And you see, like, for control, he who grabs the dry marker and writes on the whiteboard, everyone else has to turn to the whiteboard and read what he says. And he looks clever and feels clever. That's all he cared about. And he started doing this immediately. Like, as I'm talking, and he starts writing things like just terms and words at random, and I'm going like, okay, listen, hold on there for a second, and I just want to introduce myself and say why I think I'm here. And I said, look, what I was told pretty much nothing, right? So maybe that's going to come as a surprise to you. I don't know why I'm here. I'd like you to tell me what you need from me. I'm not going to just start telling you, you know, the way this is what used to really infuriate me. You'd go do a course on something just to learn one thing, and they'd insist on telling you, you know, how to bake a cake and how an egg is formed and, you know, everything that happens with a chicken's life cycle. And you're like, look, I just need to know one thing. Just this is the one thing I don't know. And they go, oh no, I have to, you know. And it's not because they need to build a foundation, it's because they need to spend time feeling clever. So they told me anyway that there was some technical things they didn't know how to do. There was a lot of tools they didn't have, both software and hardware tools, and they didn't know how to get them. And they knew that there was a lot of questions they had and didn't even know what questions to ask because they didn't know what they didn't know. And when I heard that, I thought, perfect, because that's the way I was. And I wished that when I had started, people had told me what I didn't know. And now I know all the things that I wished that had been told. And I'd written them down as I went all throughout the years. And I pretty much had a primer or a primer, however you say it, of all the things, you know, because I would test these out on my colleagues and I'd send them around to my own colleagues in my own particular base camp, let's call it, you know. So I gave them that. I said, well, let's start there. Is there anything you see there? And then we can expand on anything that looks useful. And went, yeah. And then they said, but a big part of it is, it's the processes. It's not the actual technical things. It's the processes that we have to follow. And this is it. Just like government, the bureaucracy ties you up in all this red tape. See, if you get a delivery of one of these $1 million switches, and then you put the line cards into them gently one by one, and, you know, you understand the technical aspect of, you know, maybe there's an order in which the cards need to go in, and then, you know, when you bring it online, if there's a firmware of a controller card in there, blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff that you've got to update before you put the other cards in or whatever. There's a sequence to things, and before you make certain connections and so on and so on. There's that aspect, but what is often more difficult and more frustrating to try and find out how to do it is, okay, there's things like this thing has a serial number and it has a unique asset tag, let's say. It's a fairly generic thing as well. But as well as that, you can't just get a delivery of it from the truck and then just bring it in and then just put it somewhere. You have to. So there's like a logistical continuity of, I forget what the word is, but duty of care or line of custody, maybe is what it is, as far as the supply and chain management goes. And that's from the moment that it's ordered, from the time that it's, leaving the factory, that it's on a truck and where the truck is, and then when the truck is docked, and then when you take it off the dock and where you put it in the loading bay. And then every time, right, that you bring it from one place to another, it has to be updated with its unique serial number and its location, right? Not just location in a geographical sense, but where it is in this massive facility, right? And so on and so on. But the software tools to do this don't talk to each other. And then you might have to take the information from one thing, put it into a spreadsheet, and then upload it into another thing. And maybe the format of the spreadsheet that it expects, like even just the order of the details. So if something's got a serial number, something's got a NASA tag, if you flip those things the wrong way around, you're going to get an error message. Or if it's the way that it's in an order that it doesn't expect, you're going to get an error message. But the error message won't say, "Oh, excuse me, you've got those two things the wrong way around." It'll give you like something like runtime code 1206, runtime error 1206 at line 50, and you're like, in line 50, I didn't even run a program. But you're watching the output of a compiler because the lazy programmer didn't bother putting an error handling routine into it, and there's no documentation on it because it's software that's built in house. Right? Are you starting to understand the kind of difficulties that was facing these people, and nobody was telling them? And another part of the reason why nobody was telling them was because there was several companies operating on the same site. There was a corporation that owned the facility, owned the physical building. There was a corporation that owned all the equipment inside it, and there was a corporation that was hired to hire the staff as a third party so that they could get rid of all the staff if they wanted to at any time, or any of them at any time. And that if there was bad press about it, they could say, "Oh, that wasn't one of our employees. That was some third party employee that happened to be on site at the time. This was a favorite of theirs," right? And maybe I'll leave that story till another time. So Tinfoil Hatter says, "Haha. Was there a circle of stones? Did you hear weird music? Do you remember anything else? Think, man." Maybe that's in regards to the satanic thing. Probably, I wouldn't say definitely not on site, but there might have been. I mean, there were certainly rooms that you weren't allowed access to, put it that way. Hey, got tyrants? I don't know what tyrants means. Tyrants? Anyway, or polystyrant? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'll get on with it, right? And I'll finish the story and we'll wrap up. So, look, I don't mean the story to be like where I'm the good guy and the other guy's the bad guy, right? Hopefully, you listening to me, you just understand that I'm being sincere and genuine, and this isn't about me being the hero of the hour or anything like that. But, and one last comment here before I carry on. The story is so interesting. Great inside look. Okay, good, because the thing is, whether it's whether I had an NDA or whatever it is, like, if something is the right thing to do, then that's what I'm going to do. And that's why I'm a dangerous fool and not predictable. And I'll just say this. I think it is a useful thing to be unpredictable for all of us, right? In this world as we go on. He says, keep talking. I will, and I'll finish this up. So, a lot of times traveling around, it might seem sophisticated or debonair or whatever the word for it is. Oftentimes it's not. Although I really liked this town that I was in, relatively small town by US standards, but and it was cold at the time, but the people were warm-hearted and I liked them, and I got to know a lot of the people who worked there. And sometimes we would go out in the evening and have a meal or have a drink, and it was great. So thankfully I wasn't relying on this guy for sort of social interaction. But the point of me telling you the story about the logistics of it and the sort of accounting software that takes account of basically, what should I say, like where all these valuable commodities are, and at what point in the process of, and I'll use the word as generic as well, of the deployment of these machines, where are they? So that, managers can then look at a piece of software somewhere else and have an overview of all these facilities and have a percentage of how complete all the different projects are, because all of these might be a global project, and these switches and servers and whatever might be all part of a global project. Again, that's generic enough as well, right? No trade secrets there. But if you can't upload your progress, you might have physically installed a switch, you might have cabled it up, you might have got it to whatever firmware it's supposed to be and confirmed that it's taking traffic and whatever else. Well, it's a bit like, a phrase that was said with us, like, if it's not in an email, it didn't happen. In other words, I could say something to you, you could say something to me, but if we don't have a written record of it, well, we could deny it. Right? So just say, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And you might have done all this great work, but if you can't update the logistical accounting software, let's say, to reflect the fact that you've done all this work and done it at the times that you did all these different stages, right? You're supposed to do a bit of work, update the software, do a bit of work, update the software, so that at any point there can be this granular insight into the work that's going on as it's going on. If you're not doing that, you're going to get in big trouble. And they were being fined. The third-party corporation was being fined by the parent, or not parent, but other party to the contract corporation. And then the corporation that ran the building was getting involved by saying, oh, well, we've got to think about security as well. Like, you can't be just moving that there and then going back to your desk to try and look up a piece of software. And then the third party corporation was saying, well, then we need Wi-Fi in this room. And then the people who own the building was saying, well, we're not sure if we can sign off on that. And then the major corporation was saying, well, it's up to you to supply Wi-Fi, not us. You took on this contract. Do you see how they're all trying to make each other fail? And then what they're hoping is they can pin it on the other guy. Whereas, the naive child here is thinking, if only I can just fix all these problems and I can, then we can all win, But nobody ever wants to do that. Now, in some respects, I think we did get so far over the line with getting things done that they said, well, since you got over there, things are improving. Whatever projects were being stuck are getting unstuck now. So he's making a good difference. So fair enough. Lads, can we basically stop trying to hamstring each other, stop trying to sabotage each other for a moment, and we just might actually succeed here? I think there might have been something like that, right? So while they send me over, or set me up to fail and send me over, to basically take a fall for them. And they were hoping they'd be able to say, well, listen, we sent our best guys over there and they couldn't fix your problems. That's what their plan A was. Plan B was a bit like, right, if I may say so, in Spies Like Us, where the decoy GLG-20s actually started getting some, making some inroads into Afghanistan. I haven't seen that movie in a while. It's a brilliant one. I think it's Harold Ramis, right? I won't get into that, but nice little movie, right, from the 80s. And I saw that when it came out in the cinema, and I loved it. But anyway, this fellow, I was not an expert in this software, although I'd used it, but hadn't used it in a while. And I assumed that there'd been some updates to it, and they'd made it, they'd made some changes where there was no point in me trying to tell them what I'd done a few years ago, because this guy knew the latest. And he looked so sure of himself. And he got up to the whiteboard and he was writing all these things. He was writing diagrams and circles and squares and drawing arrows between them, And I was looking at this kind of going, oh my God, I sure hope these guys are understanding it, because I haven't a clue what he's talking about. And this is going way above my head. And it just goes to show how much I don't know now, and how much, this supply chain management stuff has moved on, like, since I was working in a much smaller data center, But no, it turned out he was just talking nonsense, absolute total nonsense. But all the people there were just too polite to say it. So they were nodding and kind of going, oh, right. Oh, right. I see. Yeah. What they were hoping is that they'd kind of they were saying, could I take a picture of that with my mobile phone? So with my cell phone, I mean. So he says, yeah. But I could see that he actually looked a bit embarrassed about this, because he didn't want a record of it. Anyway, the next day they were saying to me, listen, we've looked this up and we can't really make the head or tail of this. Does this make sense to you? And I said, look, being honest with you, and I don't want to drop my colleague in it, because that's the thing. I was put in a very awkward position. They thought we were like as a team, and it feels like, say if you're both, from the same family, and you go out and you're trying to put your best foot forward, and you don't want it to seem like that there's some infighting between you, because how are they going to trust either of you if you're squabbling about stuff, And every time we decided then that evening, right, after the first day, that I would take the morning and he would take the evening, because what he kept doing was he would talk over me, and every time I would tell them something, he would try and correct me or just repeat what I'd said, but act like he was correcting me. So I tried to sort of say, look, let's nip this in the bud. You take the evenings or afternoons, I'll take the mornings. And he went, no, I'll take the mornings. I went, oh, okay, that's fine. Right. No problem with me. You take the mornings. I'm not a morning person anyway. I'll have a cup of coffee when you're talking. And then he kind of thought, oh, he played me there. He knew that's what I do. That's the way these people always think. That everything is a con, everything is a trick, because that's the way their mind works. They can't think any other way. They can't think, oh, I know what his trick is. He's trying to help people. But anyway, by the next day, he had decided he would sit in on with me because he thought like he needed to learn and see what I was saying to them. And then he thought, well, I need to just check what you're saying to them is correct. So he wanted to supervise me in this kind of way as well, right? So I said, oh, well, no problem. You come in with me as well. So he started, talking over me again. Then, and then somebody put up their hand and sort of said, oh, yeah, I said, no problem. And he says, look, that's all grand, and I get that. But look, the big problem I'm having is, and it was, again, a supply chain management problem. How do I keep this here? How am I supposed to do this technical thing while at the same time simultaneously upload all this data about the thing? And especially when that system can't even be online until I put a switch in that system uses. It's kind of going, oh, fair enough, that is a catch-22. So anyway, this fella starts talking. And I didn't know enough about it again to contradict him. And even if I did, I wasn't going to, because I didn't want to have it out with him in front of people. But it sounded like a whole load of nonsense to me. So later on, when we got back, I was nearly going to say home, but back to the hotel we were staying at, I said to him in the car park, or in the parking lot, I said to him, listen, just be honest with me here. When you were telling them how to do that thing there before we left for the last half hour, like, when was the last time you did that? Is that something you know from having done it yourself, or did you read that somewhere, or how do you know that thing? Because I was trying to get to, is it really true? Will that really work? If I tried it, if I tried to follow what you just said there, would that work? And of course, immediately he got, his back up, like, how dare you question me? Why are you asking me that? Even though I tried to approach him gently, and I knew then straight away it was all lies, and it was all nonsense. None of it was true. None of it would work. It was just totally unhelpful, and it was a total waste of time. And I said to him, look, we have just a couple of weeks probably over here. Maybe they're only going to give us a week, because they're asking, like, what progress are we making? So, like, if we're not making enough progress, if we're not making a difference, if those people are going to report back and say, listen, these guys are saying a lot of stuff, but it's not making any sense and it's not changing anything here, then that's going to be an end to it. So, like, I don't want to go back in, disgrace. And tell me now if you don't know. Like, I would much rather, right? If you don't know how to do something, just say so and we'll figure it out. And he started getting very hot under the collar. And I kept pressing him on what he was saying, and if what he was saying was true. And he said, eventually he just exploded, right? Because he lost his temper. And here's what he said. And this is the point of the story. He said, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It only matters that they believe me. So that's more or less the point of the story. And it's not, the reason I'm telling it is because it is universal. Okay. He's not unique to that. That's a big insight into why so many people are the way that they are. And as far as I know, he's not somebody who had an early life. But I'm going to leave it till next time to talk about the kind of early life that he had. Because maybe you might find that, okay, once you understand that, maybe you might say, okay, I can understand why he is the way he is. I've reflected on this for a long time. I won't say now what my conclusions or thoughts on that are just now. I'll leave it to another time. I'm going a bit long here on this one. So I'm going to just wrap it up at that. That's something I think to leave with you, because that's still, as I said those words again, that's echoing with me. It doesn't matter whether something is true or false. It only matters that they believe it. And from looking around the world now, I think you might agree with me that so many people are of that mindset. And that's why it's worse that somebody is amoral rather than immoral, because they don't believe in anything. They're lukewarm. They're neither good nor bad. They just don't care one way or another, as long as their nest is feathered. As long as like Alexander Solzhenitsyn says, don't let them tell you that they're academics or generals. They don't care one way or another. As long as they're warm and well fed, that's it. That's all they care about. They don't care about the consequences for society or for the corporation they have to work for. Even if it's an evil corporation, I was still trying to do the right thing. No matter what and again, I'm not saying I'm the hero of the story or anything like that. I'm just saying that I was disgusted to find out that nobody out there seems to be, well, apart from a few exceptions, to do the right thing no matter what. So, okay, listen, I'll wrap it up there, and I'm really glad. No point in keeping saying the punchline. Basically, I might have forgotten a few details, but I can come back to it and flesh it out a bit more and tell the next part of the story. Well, Jemima Puddleduck, thanks. I'm glad you enjoyed it, because a lot of times you're just speaking into the microphone here, and you don't know, like, you can't see the faces of your audience, so you don't know whether it's landing or not. So I'm glad, anyway. Hopefully that was what you're talking about there, that particular story there. And Vingol says, very good stream, man. What I caught of it anyway. Well, you can always play it back. Looking forward to the next one early. Well, you have the whole week to play this one back. Not that I'm trying to tout my wares to you or anything like that, but if it recorded and if it goes online, you might like to do that while you're chopping logs or repairing your diesel generator or whatever it is, doing a bit of maintenance or ironing your shirts, whatever it is you might like to do. You could listen back to this or anything on my Odysee. I'll plug my Odysee, right? I've got some more long form strident thoughts on my Odysee, and they'll have to remain Odysee exclusives. So I've put the link to my Odysee in the description of this title, and you should go over there. All right, well, thanks for listening. I'll leave it till now, and I hope to do another one next Saturday. Bye for now. Can't resist putting that last one back on screen. Goodbye again.